Thank you for listening to this free audiobook providing by Supreme Audiobooks. This work is in the public domain. We passionately create and share audiobooks for free. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button to join our community. Share your thoughts, questions, and feedback in the comments section below. Thank you and enjoy this work.
Part 1 of With the Night Mail, a story of 2000 AD by Rudyard Kipling. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. At 9 o'clock of a gusty winter night, I stood on the lower stages of one of the GPO outward mail towers. My purpose was a run to Quebec in Postal Packet 162 or such other as may be appointed, and the Postmaster General himself countersigned the order. This talisman opened all doors, even those in the dispatching caisson at the foot of the tower, where they were delivering the sorted continental mail. The bags lay packed close as herrings in the long grey underbodies which our GPO still calls coaches. 5 such coaches were filled as I watched, and were shot up the guides to be locked on to their waiting packets 300 feet nearer the stars. From the dispatching caisson I was conducted by a courteous and wonderfully learned official, Mr. L. Geary, second dispatcher of the western route, to the captain's room. This wakes an echo of old romance, where the mail captains come on for their turn of duty. He introduces me to the captain of 162, Captain Purnall, and his relief, Captain Hodgson. The one is small and dark, the other large and red, but each has the brooding, sheathed glance characteristic of eagles and aeronauts. You can see it in the pictures of our racing professionals, from L.V. Rout to little Ada Worley, that fathomless abstraction of eyes, habitually turned through naked space. On the notice board in the captain's room, the pulsing arrows of some 20 indicators register, degree by geographical degree, the progress of as many homeward-bound packets. The word Cape rises across the face of the dial. A gong strikes. The South African mid-weekly mail is at the Highgate receiving towers. That is all. It reminds one comically of the traitorous little bell which in pigeon fanciers' lofts notifies the return of a Homer. "Time for us to be on the move," says Captain Purnall, and we are shot up by the passenger lift to the top of the dispatch towers. "Our coach will lock on when it is filled, and the clerks are aboard." Number 162 waits for us in slip E of the topmost stage. The great curve of her back shines frostily under the lights, and some minute alteration of trim makes her rock a little in her holding down slips. Captain Purnall frowns and dives inside. Hissing softly, 162 comes to rest as level as a rule. From her North Atlantic winter nose-cap, worn bright as diamond with boring through uncounted leagues of hail, snow, and ice, to the inset of her 3 built-out propeller shafts, is some 240 feet. Her extreme diameter, carried well forward, is 37. Contrast this with the 900 by 95 of any crack liner, and you will realize the power that must drive a hull through all the weathers at more than the emergency speed of the cyclonic. The eye detects no joint in her skin plating, save the sweeping hair crack of the bow rudder, Maniac's rudder that assured us the dominion of the unstable air and left its inventor penniless and half-blind. It is calculated to Castelli's gull-wing curve. Raise a few feet of that all but invisible plate, 3/8 of an inch, and she will yaw 5 miles to port or starboard ere she is under control again. Give her full helm, and she returns on her track like a whiplash. Cant the whole forward, a touch on the wheel will suffice, and she sweeps at your good direction up or down. Open the complete circle, and she presents to the air a mushroom head that will bring her up, all standing within a half-mile. "Yes," says Captain Hodgson, answering my thought. "Castelli thought he'd discovered the secret of controlling aeroplanes when he'd only found out how to steer dirigible balloons. Magnac invented his rudder to help war-boats ram each other, and war went out of fashion, and Magnac, he went out of his mind because he says he couldn't serve his country any more. I wonder if any of us ever know what we're really doing." "If you want to see the coach locked, you'd better go aboard. It's due now," says Mr. Geary. I enter through the door amidships. There is nothing here for display. The inner skin of the gas tanks comes down to within a foot or two of my head, and turns over just short of the turn of the bilges. Liners and yachts disguise their tanks with decoration, but the GPO serves them raw under a lick of grey official paint. The inner skin shuts off 50 feet of the bow and as much of the stern, but the bow bulkhead is recessed for the lift shunting apparatus, as the stern is pierced for the shaft tunnels. The engine room lies almost amidships. Forward of it, extending to the turn of the bow tanks, is an aperture, a bottomless hatch at present, into which our coach will be locked. One looks down over the coamings 300 feet to the dispatching caisson, whence voices boom upward. The light below is obscured to a sound of thunder as our coach rises on its guides. It enlarges rapidly from a postage stamp to a playing card, a punt, and last a pontoon. The two clerks, its crew, do not even look up as it comes into place. The Quebec letters fly under their fingers and leap into the docketed racks, while both captains and Mr. Geary satisfy themselves that the coach is locked home. A clerk passes the waybill over the hatch coaming. Captain Purnall thumb marks and passes it to Mr. Geary. Receipt has been given and taken. "Pleasant run," says Mr. Geary, and disappears through the door, which a foot-high pneumatic compressor locks after him. "Ah!" sighs the compressor released. Our holding down clips parts with a tang. We are clear. Captain Hodgson opens the great colloid underbody porthole through which I watch million-lighted London slide eastward as the gale gets hold of us. The first of the low winter clouds cuts off the well-known view and darkens Middlesex. On the south edge of it I can see a postal packet's light ploughing through the white fleece. For an instant she gleams like a star ere she drops down towards the Highgate receiving towers. "The Bombay mail," says Captain Hodgson, and looks at his watch. "She's 40 minutes late." "What's our level?" I ask. 4,000. Aren't you coming up on the bridge?" The bridge, let us ever bless the GPO as a repository of ancientest tradition, is represented by a view of Captain Hodgson's legs, where he stands on the control platform that runs thwartships overhead. The bow colloid is unshuttered, and Captain Purnall, one hand on the wheel, is feeling for a fair slant. The dial shows 4,300 feet. "It's steep tonight," he mutters, as tier on tier of cloud drops under. "We generally pick up an easterly draught below 3,000 at this time of the year. I hate slathering through fluff." "So does Fan Cutsum. Look at him, hunt him for a slant," says Captain Hodgson. A fog light breaks cloud 100 fathoms below. The Antwerp night mail makes her signal, and rises between two racing clouds far to port, her flanks blood-red in the glare of Sheerness double light. The gale will have us over the North Sea in half an hour, but Captain Purnall lets her go composedly, nosing to every point of the compass as she rises. 5,000, 6,800, the dip dial reads ere we find the easterly drift, heralded by a flurry of snow at the 1,000-fathom level. Captain Purnall rings up the engines and keys down the governor on the switch before him. There is no sense in urging machinery when Aeolus himself gives you good knots for nothing. We are away in earnest now, our nose notched home on our chosen star. At this level the lower clouds are laid out, all neatly combed by the dry fingers of the east. Below that again is the strong westerly blow through which we rose. Overhead, a film of southerly drifting mist draws a theatrical gauze across the firmament. The moonlight turns the lower strata to silver, without a stain, except where our shadow underruns us. Bristol and Cardiff double lights, those stately inclined beams over Severnmouth, are dead ahead of us, for we keep the southern winter route. Coventry Central, the pivot of the English system, stabs upward once in 10 seconds its spear of diamond light to the north, and a point or two off our starboard bow, the Leak, the great cloud-breaker of St. David's Head, swings in an unmistakable green beam 25 degrees each way. There must be half a mile of fluff over it in this weather, but it does not affect the Leak. "Our planet's overlighted, if anything," says Captain Purnall at the wheel, as Cardiff-Bristol slides under. "I remember the old days of common white verticals that had showed 2,000 or 3,000 feet up in a mist, if you knew where to look for 'em. In really fluffy weather they might as well have been under your hat. One could get lost coming home then, and have some fun. Now it's like driving down Piccadilly." He points to the pillars of light, where the cloud-breakers bore through the cloud floor. We see nothing of England's outlines, only a white pavement pierced in all directions by these manholes of variously coloured fire, Holy Islands white and red, St. Bees interrupted white, and so on as far as the eye can reach. Blessed be Sergeant Ahrens and the Dubois brothers, who invented the cloud-breakers of the world whereby we travel in security. "Are you going to live for the Shamrock?" asks Captain Hodgson. Cork light, green fixed, enlarges as we rush to it. Captain Purnall nods. There is heavy traffic hereabouts. The cloud bank beneath us is streaked with running fissures of flame where the Atlantic boats are hurrying Londonward, just clear of the fluff. Mail packets are supposed, under the conference rules, to have the 5,000-foot lanes to themselves, but the foreigner in a hurry is apt to take liberties with English air. Number 162 lifts to a long-drawn wail of the breeze in the fore-flange of the rudder, and we make Valencia, white, green, white, at a safe 7,000 feet, dipping our beam to an incoming Washington packet. There is no cloud on the Atlantic, and faint streaks of cream round Dingle Bay show where the driven seas hammer the coast. A big satyr liner, Société Anonyme de Transport Aérien, is diving and lifting half a mile below us, in search of some break in the solid west wing. Lower still lies a disabled Dane. She is telling the liner all about it in international. Our general communication dial has caught her talk and begins to eavesdrop. Captain Hodgson makes a motion to shut it off, but checks himself. "Perhaps you'd like to listen," he says. "Argyle of St. Thomas," the Dane whimpers. "Report owners 3 starboard shaft colour bearings fused. Can make Flores as we are, but impossible further. Shall we buy spares at Fayal?" The liner acknowledges and recommends inverting the bearings. The Argyle answers that she has already done so without effect, and begins to relieve her mind about cheap German enamels for collar bearings. The Frenchman assents cordially, cries "Courage, mon ami," and switches off. Their lights sink under the curve of the ocean. "That's one of Lunton Bleemer's boats," says Captain Hodgson. Serves 'em right for putting German compos in their thrust box. She won't be in Fayal tonight. By the way, wouldn't you like to look round the engine room?" I have been waiting eagerly for this invitation, and I follow Captain Hodgson from the control platform, stooping low to avoid the bulge of the tanks. We know that Fleury's gas can lift anything, as the world-famous trials of '89 showed, but its almost indefinite powers of expansion necessitate vast tank room. Even in this thin air the lift shunts are busy, taking out 1/3 of its normal lift, and still 162 must be checked by an occasional downdraw of the rudder, or our flight would become a climb to the stars. Captain Purnall prefers an overlifted to an underlifted ship, but no two captains trim ship alike. "When I take the bridge," says Captain Hodgson, "you'll see me shunt 40% of the lift out of the gas, and run her on the upper rudder, with a swoop upwards instead of a swoop downwards, as you say. Either way will do, it's only habit. Watch our dip dial. Tim fetches her down once every 30 knots as regularly as breathing." So it is shown on the dip dial. For 5 or 6 minutes the Arrow creeps from 6,700 to 7,300. There is the faint skee of the rudder, and backslides the Arrow to 6,500 on a falling slant of 10 or 15 knots. "In heavy weather you jockey her with the screws as well," says Captain Hodgson, and unclipping the jointed bar which divides the engine room from the bare deck, he leads me on to the floor. Here we find Fleury's paradox of the bulkheaded vacuum, which we accept now without thought, literally in full blast. The 3 engines are HT&T assisted vacuo-Fleury turbines, running from 3,000 to the limit, that is to say, up to the point when the blades make the air bell, cut out a vacuum for themselves, precisely as overdriven marine propellers used to do. 162's limit is low on account of the small size of her 9 screws, which, though handier than the old Collide Velusons, bell sooner. The midships engine, generally used as a reinforce, is not running, so the port and starboard turbine vacuum chambers draw direct into the return mains. The turbines whistle reflectively. From the low-arched expansion tanks on either side, the valves descend pillar-wise to the turbine chests, and thence the obedient gas whirls through the spirals of blades with a force that would whip the teeth out of a power saw. Behind is its own pressure, held in leash or spurred on by the lift shunts. Before it, the vacuum where Fleury's ray dances in violent green bands and whirled tourbillons of flame. The jointed U-tubes of the vacuum chamber are pressure-tempered colloid. No glass would endure the strain for an instant, and a junior engineer with tinted spectacles watches the ray intently. It is the very heart of the machine, a mystery to this day. Even Fleury, who begat it and, unlike Magnac, died a multimillionaire, could not explain how the restless little imp, shuddering in the U-tube, can, in the fractional fraction of a second, strike the furious blast of gas into a chill greyish-green liquid that drains, you can hear it trickle, from the far end of the vacuum, through the eduction pipes and the mains back to the bilges. Here it returns to its gaseous, one had almost written sagacious state, and climbs to work afresh. Bilge tank, upper tank, dorsal tank, expansion chamber, vacuum, main return, as a liquid, and bilge tank once more is the ordained cycle. Fleury's ray sees to that, and the engineer with the tinted spectacles sees to Fleury's ray. If a speck of oil, or even the natural grease of the human finger, touch the hooded terminals, Fleury's ray will wink and disappear, and must be laboriously built up again. This means half a day's work for all hands, and an expense of £170 to the GPO for radium salts and such trifles. Now look at our thrust collars. You won't find much German compo there. Full jewelled, you see, says Captain Hodgson, as the engineer shunts open the top of a cap. Our shaft bearings are CMC, Commercial Minerals Company. Stones, ground with as much care as the lens of a telescope. They cost £37 apiece. So far, we have not arrived at their term of life. These bearings came from number 97, which took them over from the old Dominion of Light, which had them out of the wreck of the Perseus aeroplane in the years when men still flew linen kites over thorium engines. They are a shining reproof to all low-grade German ruby enamels, so-called Bort facings, and the dangerous and unsatisfactory alumina compounds which please dividend-hunting owners and turn skippers crazy. The rudder gear and the gas lift shunt, seated side by side under the engine-room dials, are the only machines in visible motion. The former sighs from time to time as the oil plunger rises and falls half an inch. The latter, cased and guarded like the U-tube aft, exhibits another Fleury ray, but inverted and more green than violet. Its function is to shunt the lift out of the gas, and this it will do without watching. That is all, a tiny pump rod wheezing and whining to itself beside a sputtering green lamp, 150 feet aft down the flat-top tunnel of the tanks, a violet light, restless and irresolute. Between the two, 3 white-painted turbine trunks like eel baskets laid on their side accentuates the empty perspectives. You can hear the trickle of the liquefied gas flowing from the vacuum into the bilge tanks, and the soft gluck-glock of gas locks closing as Captain Purnall brings 162 down by the head. The hum of the turbines and the boom of the air on our skin is no more than a cotton-wool wrapping to the universal stillness, and we are running an 18-second mile. I peer from the fore end of the engine-room over the hatch combings into the coach. The mail clerks are sorting the Winnipeg, Calgary and Medicine Hat bags, but there is a pack of cards ready on the table. Suddenly a bell thrills. The engineers run to the turbine valves and stand by, but the spectacled slave of the ray in the U-tube never lifts his head. He must watch where he is. We are hard braked and going astern. There is language from the control platform. "Tim's sparking badly about something," says the unruffled Captain Hodgson. "Let's look." Captain Purnall is not the suave man we left half an hour since, but the embodied authority of the GPO. Ahead of us floats an ancient aluminium-patched twin-screw tramp of the dingiest, with no more right to the 5,000-foot lane than has a horse-cart to a modern town. She carries an obsolete barbette conning tower, a 6-foot affair with railed platform forward, and our warning beam plays on the top of it as a policeman's lantern flashes on the area sneak. Like a sneak thief, too, emerges a shock-headed navigator in his shirt-sleeves. Captain Purnall wrenches open the colloid to talk with him man-to-man. There are times when science does not satisfy. "What under the stars are you doing here, you skyscraping chimney-sweep?" he shouts as we two drift side by side. "Do you know this is a mail lane? You call yourself a sailor, sir? You ain't fit to peddle toy balloons to an Eskimo. Your name and number. Report and get down and be—" "I've been blown up once," the shock-headed man cries hoarsely as a dog barking. "I don't care 2 flips of a contact for anything you can do, Posty." "Don't you, sir? But I'll make you care. I'll have you towed stern first to Disco and broke up. You can't recover insurance if you're broke for obstruction. Do you understand that?" Then the stranger bellows, Look at my propellers. There's been a woolly war down under that has knocked us into umbrella frames. We've been blown up about 40,000 feet. We're all one conjurer's watch inside. My mate's arm's broke. My engineer's head's cut open. My ray went out when the engine smashed. And, for pity's sake, give me my height, Captain. We doubt we're dropping. 6,800, can you hold it? Captain Purnall overlooks all insults and leans half out of the colloid, staring and snuffing. The stranger leaks pungently. We are to blow into St. John's with luck. We're trying to plug the fore-tank now, but she's simply whistling it away, her captain wails. She's sinking like a log, says Captain Purnall in an undertone. Call up the Banks Mark boat, George. Our dip dial shows that we, keeping abreast the tramp, have dropped 500 feet the last few minutes. Captain Purnall presses a switch, and our signal beam begins to swing through the night, twizzling spokes of light across infinity. That'll fetch something, he says, while Captain Hodgson watches the general communicator. He has called up the North Banks Mark boat a few 100 miles west and is reporting the case. I'll stand by you, Captain Purnall roars to the lone figure on the conning tower. Is it as bad as that? Comes the answer. She isn't insured. She's mine. Might have guessed as much, mutters Hodgson. Owner's risk is the worst risk of all. Can't I fetch St. John's? Not even with this breeze. The voice quavers. Stand by to abandon ship. Haven't you any lift in you fore or aft? Nothing but the midship tanks, and they're none too tight. You see, my ray gave out and... He coughs in the reek of the escaping gas. You poor devil. This does not reach our friend. What does the Mark boat say, George? Wants to know if there's any danger to traffic. Says she's in a bit of weather herself and can't quit station. I've turned in a general call, so even if they don't see our beam, someone's bound to help, or else we must. Shall I clear our slings? Hold on, here we are. A planet's liner too. She'll be up in a tick. Tell her to have her slings ready, cries his brother captain. There won't be much time to spare. Tie up your mate, he roars to the tramp. My mate's all right. It's my engineer. He's gone crazy. Shunt the lift out of him with a spanner. Hurry. But I can make St. John's if you'll stand by. You'll make the deep, wet Atlantic in 20 minutes. You're less than 5,800 now. Get your papers. A planet's liner, eastbound, heaves up in a superb spiral and takes the air of us humming. Her underbody colloid is open, and her transporter slings hang down like tentacles. We shut off our beam as she adjusts herself, steering to a hair, over the tramp's conning tower. The mate comes up, his arm strapped to his side, and stumbles into the cradle. A man with a ghastly scarlet head follows, shouting that he must go back and build up his ray. The mate assures him that he will find a nice new ray already in the liner's engine room. The bandaged head goes up, wagging excitedly. A youth and a woman follow. The liner cheers hollowly above us, and we see the passengers' faces at the saloon colloid. That's a good girl. What's the fool waiting for now? Says Captain Purnall. The skipper comes up, still appealing to us to stand by and see him fetch St. John's. He dives below and returns, at which we little human beings in the void cheer louder than ever, with the ship's kitten. Up fly the liner's hissing slings. Her underbody crashes home and she hurtles away again. The dial shows less than 3,000 feet. The Mark boat signals we must attend to the derelict, now whistling her death song as she falls beneath us in long sick zigzags. Keep our beam on her and send out a general warning, says Captain Purnall, following her down. There is no need. Not a liner in air but knows the meaning of that vertical beam and gives us and our quarry a wide berth. But she'll drown in the water, won't she? I ask. "Not always," is his answer. "I've known a derelict upend and sift her engines out of herself, and flicker round the lower lanes for 3 weeks on her forward tanks only. We'll run no risks. Pith her, George, and look sharp. There's weather ahead." Captain Hodgson opens the underbody colloid, swings the heavy pithing iron out of its rack, which in liners is generally cased as a settee, and at 200 feet releases the catch. We hear the whir of the crescent-shaped arms opening as they descend. The derelict's forehead is punched in, starred across and rent diagonally. She falls stern first, our beam upon her, slides like a lost soul down that pitiless ladder of light, and the Atlantic takes her. "A filthy business," says Hodgson. "I wonder what it must have been like in the old days." The thought had crossed my mind too. What if that wavering carcass had been filled with international-speaking men of all the internationalities, each one of them taught, that is the horror of it, that after death he would very possibly go for ever to unspeakable torment. And not half a century since, one knows now that we are only our fathers re-enlarged upon the earth. We, I say, ripped and rammed and pithed to admiration. Here Tim, from the control platform, shouts that we are to get into our inflators and to bring him his at once. We hurry into the heavy rubber suits, and the engineers are already dressed, and inflate at the air pump taps. GPO inflators are thrice as thick as a racing man's flickers, and chafe abominably under the armpits. George takes the wheel until Tim has blown himself up to the extreme of rotundity. If you kicked him off the CP to the deck, he would bounce back, but it is 162 that will do the kicking. "The mark boat's mad, stark raving crazy," he snorts, returning to command. "She says there's a bad blowout ahead and wants me to pull over to Greenland. I'll see her pithed first. We wasted an hour and a quarter over that dead duck down under, and now I'm expected to go rubbing my back all round the pole. What does she think a postal packet's made of? Gummed silk? Tell her we're coming on straight, George." George buckles him into the frame and switches on the direct control. Now under Tim's left toe lies the port engine accelerator, under his left heel the reverse, and so with the other foot. The lift shunt stops stand out on the rim of the steering wheel, where the fingers of his left hand can play on them. At his right hand is the midships engine lever, ready to be thrown into gear at a moment's notice. He leans forward in his belt, eyes glued to the colloid, and one ear cocked toward the general communicator. Henceforth he is the strength and direction of 162, through whatever may befall. The Banks Mark boat is reeling out pages of ABC directions to the traffic at large. We are to secure all loose objects, hood up our flurry rays, and on no account to attempt to clear snow from our conning towers till the weather abates. Underpowered craft, we are told, can ascend to the limit of their lift, mail packets to look out for them accordingly. The lower lanes westward are pitting very badly, with frequent blowouts, vortices, laterals, etc. Still the clear dark holds up unblemished. The only warning is the electric skin tension. I feel as though I were a lace-maker's pillow, and an irritability which the gibbering of the general communicator increases almost to hysteria. We have made 8,000 feet since we pithed the tramp, and our turbines are giving us an honest 210 knots. Very far to the west, an elongated blur of red, low down, shows us the North Banks Mark boat. There are specks of fire round her rising and falling, bewildered planets about an unstable sun, helpless shipping hanging on to her light for company's sake. No wonder she could not quit station. she warns us to look out for the backwash of the bad vortex, in which, her beam shows it, she is even now reeling. The pits of gloom about us begin to fill with very faintly luminous films, wreathing and uneasy shapes. One forms itself into a globe of pale flame that waits shivering with eagerness till we sweep by. It leaps monstrously across the blackness, alights on the precise tip of our nose, pirouettes there an instant, and swings off. Our roaring bow sinks as though that light were lead, sinks and recovers to lurch and stumble again beneath the next blowout. Tim's fingers on the lift shunt strike chords of numbers 147, 246, 753, and so on, for he is running by his tanks, only lifting or lowering her against the uneasy air. All three engines are at work, for the sooner we have skated over this thin ice the better. Higher we dare not go. The whole upper vault is charged with pale krypton vapours, which our skin friction may excite to unholy manifestations. Between the upper and the lower levels, 5,000 and 7,000, hints the mark boat, we may perhaps bolt through, if... Our bow clothes itself in blue flame, and falls like a sword. No human skill can keep pace with the changing tensions. A vortex has us by the beak, and we dive down a 2,000-foot slant at an angle. The dip dial and my bouncing body record it at 35. Our turbines scream shrilly. The propellers cannot bite on the thin air. Tim shunts the lift out of 5 tanks at once, and by sheer weight drives her bullet-wise through the maelstrom till she cushions with a jar on an upgust 3,000 feet below. "Now we've done it," says George in my ear. "Our skin friction that last slide has played old Harry with the tensions. Look out for laterals, Tim. She'll want some holding." "I've got her," is the answer. "Come up, old woman." She comes up nobly, but the laterals buffet her left and right like the pinions of angry angels. She is jolted off her course in 4 ways at once, and cuffed into place again, only to be swung aside and dropped into a new chaos. We are never without a corposant grinning on our bows, or rolling head over heels from nose to midships, and to the crackle of electricity around and within us is added once or twice the rattle of hail, hail that will never fall on any sea. Slow we must, or we may break our back, pitch bowling. "Air's a perfectly elastic fluid," roars George above the tumult. "About as elastic as a head sea off the fastnet, ain't it?" He is less than just to the good element. If one intrudes on the heavens when they are balancing their volt accounts, if one disturbs the high gods' market rates by hurling steel hulls at 90 knots across tremblingly adjusted electric tensions, one must not complain of any rudeness in the reception. Tim met it with an unmoved countenance, one corner of his underlip caught up on a tooth, his eyes fleeting into the blackness 20 miles ahead, and the fierce sparks flying from his knuckles at every turn of the hand. Now and again he shook his head to clear the sweat trickling from his eyebrows, and it was then that George, watching his chance, would slide down the life-rail and swab his face quickly with a big red handkerchief. I never imagined that a human being could so continuously labour and so collectedly think as did Tim through that hell's half-hour when the flurry was at its worst. We were dragged hither and yon by warm or frozen suctions, belched up on the tops of woollywas, spun down by vortices and clubbed aside by laterals under a dizzying rush of stars in the company of a drunken moon. I heard the rushing click of the midship engine lever sliding in and out, the low growl of the lift shunts, and louder than the yelling winds without, the scream of the bow rudder gouging into any lull that promised hold for an instant. At last we began to claw up on a cant, bow rudder and port propeller together. Only the nicest balancing of tanks saved us from spinning like the rifle bullet of the old days. "We've got to hitch to windward of that mark boat somehow," George cried. "There's no windward," I protested feebly, where I swung shackled to a stanchion. "How can there be?" He laughed as we pitched into 1,000-foot blowout. That red man laughed beneath his inflated HUD. "Look," he said, "we must clear those refugees with a high lift." The mark boat was below and a little to the southwest of us, fluctuating in the centre of her distraught galaxy. The air was thick with moving lights at every level. I take it most of them were trying to lie head to wind, but, not being hydras, they failed. An under-tanked Mograbi boat had risen to the limit of her lift, and finding no improvement, had dropped a couple of thousand. There she met a superb Woolliwa, and was blown up, spinning like a dead leaf. Instead of shutting off, she went astern, and naturally rebounded as from a wall, almost into the mark boat, whose language, our GC took it in, was humanly simple. "If they'd only ride it out quietly it'd be better," said George in a calm as we climbed like a bat above them all. "But some skippers will navigate without enough lift. What does that tadboat think she is doing, Tim?" "Playing kiss in the ring," was Tim's unmoved reply. A Transasiatic direct liner had found a smooth and butted into it full power, but there was a vortex at the tail of that smooth, so the Tad was flipped out like a pea from off a fingernail, breaking madly as she fled down and all but over-ending. "Now I hope she's satisfied," said Tim. "I'm glad I'm not a mark boat. Do I want help?" The GC dial had caught his ear. "George, you may tell that gentleman with my love, remember, George, that I do not want help. Who is the officious sardine tin?" "A Rimouski droga on the lookout for a tow." "Very kind of the Rimouski droga. This postal packet isn't being towed at present." "Those drogas will go anywhere on a chance of salvage," George explained. "We call them kittiwakes." A long-beaked, bright steel 90-footer floated at ease for one instant within hail of us, her slings coiled ready for rescues, and a single hand in her open tower. He was smoking, surrendered to the insurrection of the airs through which we tore our way. He lay in absolute peace. I saw the smoke of his pipe ascend untroubled ere his boat dropped. It seemed like a stone in a well. We had just cleared the mark boat and her disorderly neighbours, when the storm ended as suddenly as it had begun. A shooting star to northward filled the sky with the green blink of a meteorite dissipating itself in our atmosphere. Said George, "That may iron out all the tensions." Even as he spoke, the conflicting winds came to rest. The levels filled, the laterals died out in long easy swells. The airways were smoothed before us. In less than 3 minutes, the covey round the mark boat had shipped their power lights and whirred away upon their businesses. "What's happened?" I gasped. The nerve storm within the vault tingle without had passed. My inflators weighed like lead. "God, he knows," said Captain George soberly. "That old shooting star's skin friction has discharged the different levels. I've seen it happen before. Phew, what a relief!" We dropped from 10 to 6,000 and got rid of our clammy suits. Tim shut off and stepped out of the frame. The mark boat was coming up behind us. He opened the colloid in that heavenly stillness and mopped his face. "Hello, Williams," he cried. "A degree or two out of station, ain't you?" "Maybe," was the answer from the mark boat. "I've had some company this evening." "So I noticed. Wasn't that quite a little draught?" "I warned you. Why didn't you pull out round by Disco? The eastbound packets have." "Me? Not till I'm running a polar consumptive sanatorium boat. I was squinting through a colloid before you were out of your cradle, my son. I'd be the last man to deny it, the captain of the mark boat replies softly. The way you handled her just now, I'm a pretty fair judge of traffic in a vault flurry. It was 1,000 revolutions beyond anything even I've ever seen. Tim's back supples visibly to this oiling. Captain George on the CP winks and points to the portrait of a singularly attractive maiden pinned up on Tim's telescope bracket above the steering wheel. I see, wholly and entirely do I see. There is some talk overhead of coming round to tea on Friday. A brief report of the derelict's fate, and Tim volunteers as he descends. For an ABC man, young Williams is less of a high-tension fool than some. Were you thinking of taking her on, George? Then I'll just have a look round that port thrust. Seems to me it's a trifle warm, and we'll jog along. The mark boat hums off joyously and hangs herself up in her appointed eyrie. Here she will stay, a shuttleless observatory, a lifeboat station, a salvage tug, a court of ultimate appeal cum meteorological bureau for 300 miles in all directions, till Wednesday next, when her relief slides across the stars to take her buffeted place. Her black hull, double conning tower, and ever-ready slings represent all that remains to the planet of that odd old word authority. She is responsible only to the aerial board of control, the ABC of which Tim speaks so flippantly. But that semi-elected, semi-nominated body of a few score persons of both sexes controls this planet. Transportation is civilization, our motto runs. Theoretically, we can do what we please, so long as we do not interfere with the traffic and all it implies. Practically, the ABC confirms or annuls all international arrangements, and to judge from its last report, finds our tolerant, humorous, lazy little planet only too ready to shift the whole burden of private administration on its shoulders. I discuss this with Tim, sipping maté on the CP, while George fans her along over the white blur of the banks in beautiful upward curves of 50 miles each. The dip dial translates them on the tape in flowing freehand. Tim gathers up a skein of it and surveys the last few feet, which record 162's path through the vault flurry. I haven't had a fever chart like this to show up in 5 years, he says ruefully. A postal packet's dip dial records every yard of every run. The tapes then go to the ABC, which collates and makes composite photographs of them for the instruction of captains. Tim studies his irrevocable past, shaking his head. Hello, here's a 1,500-foot drop at 85 degrees. We must have been standing on our heads then, George. You don't say so, George answers. I fancied I noticed it at the time. George may not have Captain Purnall's cat-like swiftness, but he is all an artist to the tips of the broad fingers that play on the shunt stops. The delicious flight curves come away on the tape with never a waver. The mark boat's vertical spindle of light lies down to eastward, setting in the face of the following stars. Westward, where no planet should rise, the triple verticals of Trinity Bay, we keep still to the southern route, make a low-lifting haze. We seem the only thing at rest under all the heavens, floating at ease till the earth's revolution shall turn up our landing towers, and minute by minute our silent clock gives us a 16-second mile. Some fine night, says Tim. We'll be even with that clock's master. He's coming now, says George over his shoulder. I'm chasing the night west. The stars ahead dim no more than if a film of mist had been drawn under unobserved. But the deep air boom in our skin changes to a joyful shout. The dawn gust, says Tim. It'll go on to meet the sun. Look, look, there's the dark being crammed back over our bow. Come to the after colloid. I'll show you something." The engine room is hot and stuffy. The clerks in the coach are asleep, and the slave of the ray is near to follow them. Tim slides open the aft colloid and reveals the curve of the world, the ocean's deepest purple, edged with fuming and intolerable gold. Then the sun rises, and through the colloid strikes out our lamps. Tim scowls in his face. "Squirrels in a cage," he mutters. "That's all we are. Squirrels in a cage. He's going twice as fast as us. Just you wait a few years, my shining friend, and we'll take steps that will amaze you. We'll Joshua you." Yes, that is our dream, to turn all earth into the vale of Ajalon at our pleasure. So far we can drag out the dawn to twice its normal length in these latitudes, but some day, even on the equator, we shall hold the sun level in his full stride. Now we look down on a sea thronged with heavy traffic. A big submersible breaks water suddenly. Another and another follow with a swash and a suck and a savage bubbling of relieved pressures. The deep-sea freighters are rising to lung up after the long night, and the leisurely ocean is all patterned with peacock's eyes of foam. "We'll lung up too," says Tim, and when we return to the CP, George shuts off. The colloids are opened, and the fresh air sweeps her out. There is no hurry. The old contracts, they will be revised at the end of the year, allow 12 hours for a run, which any packet can put behind her in 10. So we breakfast in the arms of an easterly slant, which pushes us along at a languid 20. To enjoy life and tobacco, begin both on a sunny morning half a mile or so above the dappled Atlantic cloud belts, and after a vault flurry which has cleared and tempered your nerves. While we discuss the thickening traffic with the superiority that comes of having a high level reserved to ourselves, we heard, and I for the first time, the morning hymn on a hospital boat. She was cloaked by a skein of ravelled fluff beneath us, and we caught the chant before she rose into the sunlight. "O ye winds of God," sang the unseen voices, "bless ye the Lord. Praise him and magnify him for ever." We slid off our caps and joined in. When our shadow fell across her great open platforms, they looked up and stretched out their hands neighbourly while they sang. We could see the doctors and the nurses and the white button-like faces of the cot patients. She passed slowly beneath us, heading northward, her hull wet with the dews of the night, all ablaze in the sunshine. So took she the shadow of a cloud and vanished, her song continuing. "O ye holy and humble men of heart, bless ye the Lord. Praise him and magnify him for ever." She's a public lunger, or she wouldn't have been singing the Benedicite, and she's a Greenlander, or she wouldn't have snow blinds over her colloids, said George at last. She'll be bound for Frederikshavn or one of the glacier sanatoriums for a month. If she was an accident ward, she'd be hung up at the 8,000-foot level. Yes, consumptives. Funny how the new things are the old things. I've read in books, Tim answered, that savages used to haul their sick and wounded up to the tops of hills because microbes were fewer there. We hoist them into sterilized air for a while. Same idea. How much do the doctors say we've added to the average life of a man? 30 years, says George with a twinkle in his eye. Are we going to spend them all up here, Tim? Flap along, then, flap along. Who's hindering? The senior captain laughed as we went in. We held a good lift to clear the coastwise and continental shipping, and we had need of it. Though our route is in no sense a populated one, there is a steady trickle of traffic this way along. We met Hudson Bay furriers out of the Great Preserve, hurrying to make their departure from Bonavista with sable and black fox for the insatiable markets. We overcrossed Keewatin liners, small and cramped, and their captains who see no land between Trepassy and Blanco know what gold they bring back from West Africa. Transasiatic directs we met, soberly ringing the world round the 50th meridian at an honest 70 knots, and wide-painted Ackroyd and Hunt fruiters out of the south fled beneath us, their ventilated hulls whistling like Chinese kites. Their market is in the north among the northern sanatoria, where you can smell their grapefruit and bananas across the cold snows. Argentine beef boats we sighted too, of enormous capacity and unlovely outline. They too feed on the northern health stations in ice-bound ports where submersibles dare not rise. Yellow-bellied ore-flats and ungarvered petrol tanks punted down leisurely out of the north like strings of unfrightened wild duck. It does not pay to fly minerals and oil a mile farther than is necessary, but the risks of transshipping to submersibles in the ice pack off Nain or Hebron are so great that these heavy freighters fly down to Halifax direct and scent the air as they go. They are the biggest tramps aloft except the Athabasca grain tubs, but these last, now that the wheat is moved, are busy over the world's shoulder, timber lifting in Siberia. We held to the St. Lawrence. It is astonishing how the old waterways still pull us children of the air, and followed his broad line of black between its drifting ice blocks, all down the park that the wisdom of our fathers, but everyone knows the Quebec run. We dropped to the Heights receiving towers 20 minutes ahead of time, and there hung at ease till the Yokohama Intermediate packet could pull out and give us our proper slip. It was curious to watch the action of the holding down clips all along the frosty riverfront as the boats cleared or came to rest. A big hamburger was leaving Point Levis, and her crew, unshipping the platform railings, began to sing Elsinore, the oldest of our shanties. You know it, of course. Mother Rugan's tea-house on the Baltic, 40 couple waltzing on the floor, and you can watch my rave, for I must go away and dance with Ella Swain at Elsinore. Then, while they sweated home the covering plates, Nor, 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 west from Surabaya to the Baltic, 90 knot an hour to the score, Mother Rugan's tea-house on the Baltic, and a dance with Ella Swain at Elsinore. The clips parted with a gesture of indignant dismissal, as though Quebec, glittering under her snows, were casting out these light and unworthy lovers. Our signal came from the Heights. Tim turned and floated up, but surely then it was with a passionate appeal that the great tower arms flung open. Or did I think so because on the upper staging a little hooded figure also opened her arms wide towards her father? In 10 seconds the coach with its clerks clashed down to the receiving caisson. The hostlers displaced the engineers at the idle turbines, and Tim, prouder of this than all, introduced me to the maiden of the photograph on the shelf. "And by the way," said he to her, stepping forth in sunshine under the hat of civil life, "I saw young Williams in the Mark boat. I've asked him to tea on Friday." End of Part 1. Part 2 of With the Night Mail, a story of 2000 AD, by Rudyard Kipling. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Aerial Board of Control Bulletin. Lights. No changes in English inland lights for week ending December the 18th. Planetary coastal lights. Week ending December the 18th. Verde inclined guide light changes from first Proximo to triple flash, green, white, green, in place of occulting red as heretofore. The warning light for Harmattan winds will be continuous vertical glare, white, on all oases of Trans-Saharan northeast by east main routes. Invercargill, New Zealand. From first Proximo, extreme southerly light, double red, will exhibit white beam, inclined 45 degrees on approach of southerly buster. Traffic flies high off this coast between April and October. Table Bay, Devil's Peak glare removed to Simonsburg. Traffic making Table Mountain coastwise keep all lights from 3 Anchor Bay at least 5 shipping 100 feet under, and do not round to till beyond East Shoulder, Devil's Peak. Sandhead's Light, green triple vertical marks, new private landing stage for Bay and Burma traffic only. Snaefell Jockle, white occulting light withdrawn for winter. Patagonia, no summer light south central Pilar. This includes Staten Island and Port Stanley. Cape Navaran, quadruple fog flash white, 1 minute intervals new. East Cape, fog flash, single white with single bomb, 30-second intervals new. Malayan Archipelago, lights unreliable owing eruptions, lay from Somerset to Singapore direct, keeping highest levels. For the board, Catathan, St. Just, Van Hedder, lights. Casualties. Week ending December the 18th. Sable Island landing towers. Green freighter, number indistinguishable, upended and foretank pierced after collision. Past 300 foot level, 2 p.m. December the 15th. Watched to water and pithed by mark boats. Newfoundland Banks. Postal Packet 162 reports Halma freighter, Fowey St. John's, abandoned, leaking after weather, 46 degrees 15 minutes north, 50 degrees 15 minutes west. Crew rescued by Planet Liner Asteroid. Watched to water and pithed by postal packets December the 14th. Kerguelen Mark Boat. Reports last call from Simena freighter, Gayatong Hook and Company, taking water and sinking in snowstorm South MacDonald Islands. No wreckage recovered. Addresses etc. of crew at all ABC offices. Fezan. Tad freighter Ulema, taken ground during Harmattan on Akakas Range. Underplates strained. Crew at Gats were repairing December the 13th. Biscay Mark Boat reports Carducci, Vallandigham Line, slightly spiked in Western Gorge, Plan de Benasque. Passengers transferred Andorra, same line. Barcelona Mark Boat salving cargo December the 12th. Ascension Mark Boat. Wreck of unknown racing plane, pardon rudder, wire-stiffened Xylanite vans and Harless engine seating, sighted and salved, 7 degrees 20 minutes south, 18 degrees 41 minutes west, December the 15th. Photos at all ABC offices. Missing. No answer to general call having been received during the last week from following overdues. They are posted as missing. Atlantis, W17630, Canton Valparaiso. Audumla, W809, Stockholm to Odessa. Berenice, W2206, Riga to Vladivostok. Draco, E446, Coventry to Punta Arenas. Tontine, E3068, Cape Wrath to Ungava. Wusung, E41776, Hankow to Lobito Bay. General call, all mark boats out for Jane Eyre, W6990, Port Rupert to City of Mexico. Santander, W5514, Gobi Desert to Manila. V. Edmondson, E9690, Kandahar to Fiume. Broke for obstruction and quitting levels. Valkyrie, racing plane, A.J. Hartley, owner, New York, twice warned. Geisha, racing plane, S. Van Cott, owner, Philadelphia, twice warned. Marvel of Peru, racing plane, J. X. Peixoto, owner, Rio de Janeiro, twice warned. For the board, Lazareff, McKeough, Goldblatt, traffic. Notes. High-level sleet. The northern weather so far shows no sign of improvement. From all quarters come complaints of the unusual prevalence of sleet at the higher levels. Racing planes and digs alike have suffered severely, the former from unequal deposits of half-frozen slush on their vans, and only those who have held up a badly balanced plane in a crosswind know what that means, and the latter from loaded bows and snow-cased bodies. As a consequence, the northern and northwestern upper levels have been practically abandoned, and the high flyers have returned to the ignoble security of the 300, 500, and 600-foot levels. But there remain a few undaunted sun hunters who, in spite of frozen stays and ice-jammed connecting rods, still haunt the blue Empyrean. Batboat racing. The scandals of the past few years have at last moved the yachting world to concerted action in regard to batboat racing. We have been treated to the spectacle of what are practically keeled racing planes, driven a clear 5 foot or more above the water, and only eased down to touch their so-called native element as they near the line. Judges and starters have been conveniently blind to this absurdity, but the public demonstration off St. Catherine's Light at the autumn regattas has borne ample if tardy fruit. In future the bat is to be a boat, and the long unheeded demand of the true sportsman for no daylight under mid-keel in smooth water is in a fair way to be conceded. The new rules severely restricts plane area and lift alike. The gas compartments are permitted both fore and aft, as in the old type, but the water ballast central tank is rendered obligatory. These things work, if not for perfection, at least for the evolution of a sane and wholesome waterborne cruiser. The type of rudder is unaffected by the new rules, so we may expect to see the Long Davidson make, the patent on which has just expired, come largely into use henceforward, although the strain on the stern post in turning at speeds over 40 miles an hour is admittedly very severe. But batboat racing has a great future before it. Correspondence. Skylarking on the equator. To the editor, only last week, while crossing the equator, west 26 degrees 15 minutes, I became aware of a furious and irregular cannonading some 15 or 20 knots south 4 east. Descending to the 500 feet level, I found a party of Transylvanian tourists engaged in exploding scores of the largest pattern atmospheric bombs, ABC standard, and in the intervals of their pleasing labours, firing bow and stern smoke ring swivels. This orgy, I can give it no other name, went on for at least 2 hours and naturally produced violent electric derangements. My compasses, of course, were thrown out, my bow was struck twice, and I received 2 brisk shocks from the lower platform rail. On remonstrating, I was told that these professors were engaged in scientific experiments. The extent of their scientific knowledge may be judged by the fact that they expected to produce, I give their own words, a little blue sky, if they went on long enough. This in the heart of the doldrums at 450 feet. I have no objection to any amount of blue sky in its proper place. It can be found at the 2000 level for practically 12 months out of the year. But I submit, with all deference to the educational needs of Transylvania, that skylarking in the centre of a main-travelled road, where, at the best of times, electricity literally drips off one's stanchions and screw blades, is unnecessary. When my friends had finished, the road was seared and blown and pitted with unequal pressure layers, spirals, vortices, and readjustments, for at least an hour. I pitched badly twice in an upward rush, solely due to these diabolical throwdowns that came near to wrecking my propeller. Equatorial work at slow levels is trying enough in all conscience without the added terrors of scientific hooliganism in the doldrums. Brill, J. Vincent Matthews. We entirely sympathise with Professor Matthews' views, but unluckily, till the Board sees fit to further regulate the southern areas in which scientific experiments may be conducted, we shall always be exposed to the risk which our correspondent describes. Unfortunately, a chimera bombinating in a vacuum is nowadays only too capable of producing secondary causes. Editor. Answers to correspondence. Vigilance. The laws of auroral derangements are still imperfectly understood. Any overheated motor may of course seize without warning, but so many complaints have reached us of accidents similar to yours while shooting the aurora that we are inclined to believe with Laval that the upper strata of the aurora borealis are practically one big electric leak, and that the paralysis of your engines was due to complete magnetization of all metallic parts. Low-flying planes often glue up when near the magnetic pole, and there is no reason in science why the same disability should not be experienced at higher levels when the auroras are delivering strongly. Indignant. On your own showing you were not under control, that you could not hoist the necessary NUC lights on approaching a traffic lane because your electrics had short-circuited, is a misfortune which might befall anyone. The ABC, being responsible for the planet's traffic, cannot, however, make allowance for this kind of misfortune. A reference to the code will show that you were fined on the lower scale. Planiston. 1. The 5,000-kilometre overland was won last year by L.V. Rauch, R.M. Rauch, his brother, in the same week pulling off the 10,000 oversea. RM's average worked out at a fraction over 500 kilometres per hour, thus constituting a record. 2. Theoretically, there is no limit to the lift of a dirigible. For commercial and practical purposes, 15,000 tons is accepted as the most manageable. Paterfamilias. None whatever. He is liable for direct damage, both to your chimneys and any collateral damage caused by fall of bricks into garden, etc., etc. Bodily inconvenience and mental anguish may be included, but the average jury are not, as a rule, men of sentiment. If you can prove that his grapnel removed any portion of your roof, you had better rest your case on decoverture of domicile. See Parkins v. Duboulay. We entirely sympathise with your position, but the night of the 14th was stormy and confused, and you may have to anchor on a stranger's chimney yourself some night. Verbum sap. Aldebaran. War as a paying concern ceased in 1967. 2. The Convention of London expressly reserves to every nation the right of waging war so long as it does not interfere with the world's traffic. 3. The ABC was constituted in 1949. LMD. Keep her dead on at half power, taking advantage of the lulls to speed up and creep into it. She will strain much less this way than in quartering across a gale. 2. Nothing is to be gained by reversing into a following gale, and there is always a risk of a turnover. 3. The formulae for stunsail brakes are uniformly unreliable and will continue to be so as long as air is compressible. Pegamoid. Personally, we prefer glass or flux compounds to any other material for winter work nose caps, as being absolutely non-hygroscopic. 2. We cannot recommend any particular make. Pulmonar. For the symptoms you describe, try the Gobi Desert Sanitaria. The low levels of the Saharan Sanitaria are against them, except at the outset of the disease. 2. We do not recommend boarding houses or hotels in this column. Beginner. On still days, the air above a large inhabited city being slightly warmer, i.e. thinner, than the atmosphere of the surrounding country, a plane drops a little on entering the rarefied area, precisely as a ship sinks in a little fresh water. Hence the phenomena of jolt and your inexplicable collisions with factory chimneys. In air, as on earth, it is safest to fly high. Emergency. There is only one rule of the road in air, earth, and water. Do you want the firmament to yourself? Picciola. Both poles have been overdone in art and literature. Leave them to science for the next 20 years. You did not send a stamp with your verses. North Nigeria. The mark boat was within her right in warning you up on the reserve. The shadow of a low-flying dirigible scares the game. You can buy all the photos you need at Sokoto. New Era. It is not etiquette to overcross an ABC official's boat without asking permission. He is one of the body responsible for the planet's traffic, and for that reason must not be interfered with. You presumably are out on your own business or pleasure, and should leave him alone. For humanity's sake, don't try to be democratic. Reviews. The Life of Xavier Laval, reviewed by René Talon, École Aéronautique, Paris. 10 years ago, Laval, that imperturbable dreamer of the heavens, as Lazareff hailed him, gathered together the fruits of a lifetime's labour, and gave it, with well-justified contempt, to a world bound hand and foot to Barrald's theory of vertices and compensating electric nodes. They shall see, he wrote in that immortal postscript to the heart of the cyclone, the laws whose existence they derided, written in fire beneath them. But even here, he continues, there is no finality. Better 1,000 times my conclusions should be discredited than that my dead name should lie across the threshold of the temple of science, a bar to further inquiry. So died Laval, a prince of the powers of the air, and even at his funeral Cellier jested at him who had gone to discover the secrets of the aurora borealis. If I thus choose to be banal, it is only to remind you that Cellier's theories are today as exploded as the ludicrous deductions of the Spanish school. In place of their fugitive and warring dreams, we have definitely Laval's law of the cyclone, which he surprised in darkness and cold at the foot of the overarching throne of the aurora borealis. It is there that I, intent on my own investigations, have passed and repassed 100 times the worn leonine face, white as the snow beneath him, furrowed with wrinkles like the seams and gashes upon the North Cape, the nervous hand integrally a part of the mechanism of his flighter, and above all the wonderful lambent eyes turned to the zenith. "Master," I would cry as I moved respectfully beneath him, "what is it you seek today?" and always the answer, clear and without doubt, from above, "The old secret, my son." The immense egotism of youth forced me on my own path, but, cry of the human always, had I known, if I had known, I would many times have bartered my poor laurels for the privilege, such as Tinsley and Herrera possess, of having aided him in his monumental researches. It is to the filial piety of Victor Laval that we owe the 2 volumes consecrated to the ground life of his father, so full of the holy intimacies of the domestic hearth. One returned from the abysms of the utter north to that little house upon the outskirts of Meudon. It was not the philosopher, the daring observer, the man of iron energy that imposed himself on his family, but a fat and even plaintive jester, a farceur incarnate and kindly, the co-equal of his children, and, it must be written, not seldom the comic despair of Madame Laval, who, as she writes 5 years after the marriage to her venerable mother, found in this unequalled intellect whose name I bear the abandon of a large and very untidy boy. Here is her letter. Xavier returned from I do not know where at midnight, absorbed in calculations on the eternal question of his Aurora, la belle Aurore, whom I begin to hate. Instead of anchoring, I had set out the guide light above our roof, so he had but to descend and fasten the plane. He wandered, profoundly distracted, above the town, with his anchor down. Figure to yourself, dear mother, it is the roof of the mayor's house that the grapnel first engages. That I do not regret, for the mayor's wife and I are not sympathetic. But when Xavier uproots my pet Oracaria and bears it across the garden into the conservatory, I protest at the top of my voice. Little Victor, in his night clothes, runs to the window, enormously amused at the parabolic flight without reason, for it is too dark to see the grapnel of my prized tree. The mayor of Meudon thunders at our door in the name of the law, demanding, I suppose, my husband's head. Here is the conversation through the megaphone. Xavier is 200 feet above us. "Monsieur Laval, descend and make reparation for outrage of domicile. Descend, Monsieur Laval." No one answers. "Xavier Laval, in the name of the law, descend and submit to process for outrage of domicile." Xavier, roused from his calculations, only comprehending the last words. "Outrage of domicile? My dear mayor, who is the man that has corrupted thy Julie?" The mayor, furious. "Xavier Laval!" Xavier, interrupting. "I have not that felicity. I am only a dealer in cyclones." My faith, he raised one then. All Meudon attended in the streets, and my Xavier, after a long time comprehending what he had done, excused himself in 1,000 apologies. At last the reconciliation was effected in our house over a supper at 2 in the morning. Julie in a wonderful costume of compromises, and I have her and the mayor pacified in beds in the Blue Room. And on that next day, when the mayor rebuilds his roof, her Xavier departs anew for the Aurora Borealis, there to commence his life's work. Monsieur Victor Laval tells us of that historic collision en plein on the flank of Hecla between Herrera, then a pillar of the Spanish school, and the man destined to confute his theories and lead him intellectually captive. Even through the years, the immense laugh of Laval as he sustains the Spaniard's wrecked plane and cries, "Courage! I shall not fall until I have found truth, and I hold you fast," rings like the call of trumpets. This is that Laval whom the world, immersed in speculations of immediate gain, did not know nor suspect, the Laval whom they adjudged to the last a pedant and a theorist. The human, as apart from the scientific side, developed in his own volumes, of his epoch-making discoveries, is marked with a simplicity, clarity, and good sense beyond praise. I would specially refer such as doubt the sustaining influence of ancestral faith upon character and will to the 11th and 19th chapters, in which are contained the opening and consummation of the Tellurionical records, extending over 9 years. Of their tremendous significance, be sure that the modest house at Meudon knew as little as that the records would one day be the world standard in official meteorology. It was enough for them that their Xavier, this son, this father, this husband, ascended periodically to commune with powers, it might be angelic, beyond their comprehension, and that they united daily in prayers for his safety. "Pray for me," he says upon the eve of each of his excursions, and returning with an equal simplicity, he renders thanks after supper in the little room where he kept his barometers. To the last, Lavelle was a Catholic of the old school, accepting, he who had looked into the very heart of the lightnings, the dogmas of papal infallibility, of absolution, of confession, of relics great and small, marvellous, enviable contradiction. The completion of the Tellurionical records closed what Laval himself was pleased to call the theoretical side of his labours, labours from which the youngest and least impressionable planeur might well have shrunk. He had traced through cold and heat across the deeps of the oceans, with instruments of his own invention, over the inhospitable heart of the polar ice and the sterile visage of the deserts, league by league, patiently, unweariedly, remorselessly, from their ever-shifting cradle under the magnetic pole to their exalted deathbed in the utmost ether of the upper atmosphere, each one of the isoconical tellurions, Laval's curves as we call them today. He had disentangled the nodes of their intersections, assigning to each its regulated period of flux and reflux. Thus equipped, he summons Herrera and Tinsley, his pupils, to the final demonstration, as calmly as though he were ordering his flighter for some midday journey to Marseille. "I have proved my thesis," he writes. "It remains now only that you should witness the proof. We go to Manila tomorrow. A cyclone will form off the Pescadores south 17 east in 4 days, and will reach its maximum intensity in 27 hours after inception. It is there I will show you the truth." A letter heretofore unpublished from Herrera to Madame Laval tells us how the master's prophecy was verified. To be continued. Advertising section. Miscellaneous. Once. Required immediately for East Africa a thoroughly competent plane and dirigible driver, acquainted with petrol, radium, and helium motors and generators. Low-level work only, but must understand heavyweight digs. Mossamedes Transport Association, 84 Palestine Buildings, EC. Man wanted. Dig driver for Southern Alps with Saharan summer trips. High levels, high speed, high wages. Apply M. Sydney, Hotel San Stefano, Monte Carlo. Family dirigible. A competent, steady man wanted for slow-speed, low-level Tangier dirigible. No night work, no sea trips. Must be member of the Church of England and make himself useful in the garden. M.R. The Rectory, Grays Barton, Wilts. Commercial dig, Central and Southern Europe. A smart, active man for an LMT dig. Night work only. Headquarters, London and Cairo. A linguist preferred. Bagman, Charing Cross Hotel, WC. Urgent. For sale. A bargain. Single plane, narrow gauge fans. Pink motor, restayed this autumn. Handsome air kit. 38-inch chest, 15.5-inch collar. Can be seen by appointment. N2650. This office. The Beeline Bookshop. Beltsway Books, giving town lights for all towns over 4,000 population, as laid down by ABC. The World, complete 2 volumes, thin Oxford, limp back, 12 shillings and sixpence. Belt's Coastal Itinerary, Shore Lights of the World, 7 shillings and sixpence. The Transatlantic and Mediterranean Traffic Lines, by authority of the ABC, paper 1 shilling and sixpence, cloth 2 shillings and sixpence, ready January the 15th. Arctic Aeroplaning, Siemens and Galt, cloth boards 3 shillings and sixpence. Laval's Heart of the Cyclone, with supplementary charts, 4 shillings and sixpence. Rimington's Pitfalls in the Air, and Table of Comparative Densities, 3 shillings and sixpence. Angelo's Desert in a Dirigible, new edition revised, 5 shillings and ninepence. Vaughan's Plane Racing in Calm and Storm, 2 shillings and sixpence. Vaughan's Hints to the Airmateur, 1 shilling. Hoffman's Laws of Lift and Velocity, with diagrams, 3 shillings and sixpence. De Vitra's Theory of Shifting Ballast in Dirigibles, 2 shillings and sixpence. Sanger's Weathers of the World, 4 shillings. Sanger's Temperatures at High Altitudes, 4 shillings. Hawkins' Fog and How to Avoid It, 3 shillings. Van Zuylen's Secondary Effects of Thunderstorms, 4 shillings and sixpence. Dahlgren's Air Currents and Epidemic Diseases, 5 shillings and sixpence. Redmayne's Disease and the Barometer, 7 shillings and sixpence. Walton's Health Resorts of the Gobi and Chameau, 3 shillings and sixpence. Walton's The Pole and Pulmonary Complaints, 7 shillings and sixpence. Mutlow's High-Level Bacteriology, 7 shillings and sixpence. Halliwell's Illuminated Star Map, with clockwork attachment giving apparent motion of heavens, boxed complete with clamps for binnacle, 36-inch size, only £2 2 shillings, invaluable for night work, with ABC certificate, £3 10 shillings. Zalinsky's Standard Works, Passes of the Himalayas, 5 shillings, Passes of the Sierras, 5 shillings, Passes of the Rockies, 5 shillings, Passes of the Urals, 5 shillings. The 4 boxed, limp cloth with charts, 15 shillings. Gray's Air Currents in Mountain Gorges, 7 shillings and sixpence. A.C. Belt and Son, Reading. Safety wear for aeronauts. Flickers, 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 high-level flickers. He that is down need fear no fall. Fear not, you will fall lightly as down. Hanson's air kits are down in all respects. Tremendous reductions in prices previous to winter stocking. Pure parakeets with cellulose seats and shoulder pads, weighted to balance, unequalled for all drop work. Our trebly resilient heavy kit is the Naples Ultra of comfort and safety. Gas-buoyed, waterproof, hail-proof, non-conducting flickers with pipe and nozzle fitting all types of generator. Graduated tap on left hip. Hanson's flickers lead the aerial flight. 197 Oxford Street. The new weighted flicker with tweed or Cheviot surface cannot be distinguished from the ordinary suit till inflated. Flickers, flickers, flickers. Appliances for airplanes. What skid was to our forefathers on the ground, pitch is to their sons in the air. The popularity of the large, unwieldy, slow, expensive dirigible over the light, swift plane is mainly due to the former's immunity from pitch. Collinson's forward-socketed airvan renders it impossible for any plane to pitch. The CFS is automatic, simple as a shutter, certain as a power hammer, safe as oxygen, fitted to any make of plane. Collinson, 186 Brompton Road, Workshops, Chiswick. Lundy and Mathers, sole agents for the Eastern Hemisphere. Starters and Guides. Hotel, club and private house plane starters, slips and guides are fixed by skilled workmen in accordance with local building laws. Rackstraws 40-foot collapsible steel starters with automatic release at end of travel. Prices per foot run, clamps and crampons included. The safest on the market. Weaver and Denison, Middleborough. Airplanes and dirigible goods. Remember, planes are swift, so is death. Planes are cheap, so is life. Why does the plane builder insist on the safety of his machines? Methinks the gentlemen protest too much. The Standard Dig Construction Company do not build kites. They build, equip and guarantee dirigibles. Standard Dig Construction Company, Millwall and Buenos Aires. Hovers, Powell's wind hovers, for planes trying to in heavy weather. Save the motor and strain on the forebody. Will not send to leeward. Albatross wind hovers, rigid ribbed, according to HP and weight. We fit and test free to 40 degrees east of Greenwich. Ellen W. Powell, 196 Victoria Street, W. Remember, we shall always be pleased to see you. We build and test and guarantee our dirigibles for all purposes. They go up when you please, and they do not come down till you please. You can please yourself, but you might as well choose a dirigible. Standard Dirigible Construction Company, Millwall and Buenos Aires. Geyer and Hutt, Birmingham, England and Birmingham, Alabama. Towers, landing stages, slips and lifts, public and private. Contractors to the ABC Southwestern European Postal Construction Department. Sole patentees and owners of the Collision Anti-Quake Diagonal Tower Tie. Only gold medal Kyoto Exhibition of Aerial Appliances, 1997. Airplanes and dirigibles. CMC. Our synthetical mineral bearings are chemically and crystallogically identical with the minerals whose names they bear. Any size, any surface, diamond, rock crystal, agate, and ruby bearings. Cups, caps, and collars for the higher speeds. For tractor bearings and spindles, imperative. For rear propellers, indispensable. For all working parts, advisable. Commercial Minerals Company, 107 Minories. Resurgam. If you have not clothed yourself in a Normandy Resurgam, you will probably not be interested in our next week's list of air kits. Resurgam Air Kit Emporium, Hymans and Graham, 1198 Lower Broadway, New York. Remember, it is now nearly a century since the plane was to supersede the dirigible for all purposes. Today, none of the planet's freight is carried on plan. Less than 2% of the planet's passengers are carried on plan. We design, equip and guarantee dirigibles for all purposes. Standard Dig Construction Company, Millwall and Buenos Aires. Bat boats. Flint and Mantell, Southampton. For sale at the end of the season, the following bat boats. Griselda, 65 knots, 42 feet, 430 Nom McGuinness motor, underrake rudder. Mabel, 50 knots, 40 feet, 310 Hargreaves motor, Douglas lock steering gear. I've Mona, 50 knots, 35 feet, 300 Hargreaves, radium accelerator, Miller keel and rudder. The above are well known on the south coast as sound, wholesome, knockabout boats, with ample cruising accommodation. Griselda carries spare set of Hoffman racing vans, and can be lifted 3 foot clear in smooth water, with ballast tanks swung aft. The others do not lift clear of water, and are recommended for beginners. Also, by private treaty, racing BB Tarpon, 76 winning flags, 137 knots, 60 feet, long Davidson double underrake rudder, new this season and unstrained, 850 Nom McGuinness motor, radium relays and pond generator, bronze breakwater forward and treble reinforced forefoot and entry, Talford rockered keel, triple set of Hoffman vans, giving maximum lifting surface of 5,327 square feet. Tarpon has been lifted and held 7 feet for 2 miles between touch and touch. Our autumn list of racing and family bats ready on the 9th of January. Airplanes and starters. Hinks moderator. Monorail overhead starter for family and private planes up to 25 foot over all. Absolutely safe. Hinks and Company, Birmingham. J.D. Ardagh. I am not concerned with your plane after it leaves my guides, but till then I hold myself personally responsible for your life, safety and comfort. My hydraulic buffer stop cannot release till the motors are working up to bearing speed, thus securing a safe and graceful flight without pitching. Remember our motto, upward and outward, and do not trust yourself to so-called rigid guide bars. J.D. Ardagh, Belfast and Turin. Accessories and spares. Christian Wright and Oldys, established 1924. Accessories and spares. Hooded binnacles with dip dials, automatically recording change of level, illuminated face. All heights from 50 to 15,000 feet. £2 10 shillings. With aerial board of control certificate, £3 11 shillings. Foot and hand foghorns, sirens toned to any club note, with air chest belt driven from motor, £6 8 shillings. Wireless installations synchronized to ABC requirements, in neat mahogany case, 100-mile range, £3 3 shillings. Grapnels, mushroom anchors, pithing irons, winches, hawsers, snaps, shackles and mooring ropes, for lawn, city and public installations. Detachable undercars, aluminium or stamped steel. Keeled undercars for planes, single-action detaching gear, turning car into boat with one motion of the wrist. Invaluable for sea trips. Head, side and riding lights by size, numbers 00 to 20, ABC standard. Rockets and fog bombs in colours and tones of the principal clubs, boxed. A selection of 20, £2 17 shillings and sixpence. International night signals, boxed, £1 11 shillings and sixpence. Spare generators guaranteed to lifting power marked on cover. Prices according to power. Wind noses for dirigibles. Pegamoid, cane stiffened, lacquered cane or aluminium and flux for winter work. Detachable undercars, aluminium or stamped steel. Smoke ring cannon for hailstorms, swivel mounted, bow or stern. Propeller blades, metal tungsten backed, papier-mâché, wire stiffened, ribbed xylonite, Nixon's patent, all razor edged. Price by pitch and diameter. Compressed steel bow screws for winter work. Fused ruby or commercial mineral company bearings and collars. agate-mounted thrust blocks up to 4 inches, Maniac's bow rudders, Laval's patent grooving, wove steel beltings for outboard motors, non-magnetic, radium batteries, all powers to 150 HP in pairs, helium batteries, all powers to 300 HP tandem, stunsail brakes, worked from upper or lower platform, direct plunge brakes worked from lower platform only, loaded silk or fibre, wind-tight, catalogues free throughout the planet. End of Part 2. End of With the Night Mail, A Story of 2000, by Rudyard Kipling. As Easy as ABC, by Rudyard Kipling. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The ABC, that semi-elected, semi-nominated body of a few score persons, controls the planet. Transportation is civilization, our motto runs. Theoretically, we do what we please, so long as we do not interfere with the traffic and all it implies. Practically, the ABC confirms or annuls all international arrangements, and to judge from its last report, finds our tolerant, humorous, lazy little planet only too ready to shift the whole burden of public administration on its shoulders. With the Night Mail. Isn't it about time that our planet took some interest in the proceedings of the Aerial Board of Control? One knows that easy communications nowadays, and lack of privacy in the past, have killed all curiosity among mankind, but as the board's official reporter I am bound to tell my tale. At 9:30 a.m, August the 26th, AD 2065, the board, sitting in London, was informed by De Forest that the district of Northern Illinois had riotously cut itself out of all systems, and would remain disconnected till the board should take over and administer it direct. Every Northern Illinois freight and passenger tower was, he reported, out of action. All district, main, local and guiding lights had been extinguished. All general communications were dumb, and through traffic had been diverted. No reason had been given, but he gathered unofficially from the mayor of Chicago that the district complained of crowd-making and invasion of privacy. As a matter of fact, it is of no importance whether Northern Illinois stay in or out of planetary circuits. As a matter of policy, any complaint of invasion of privacy needs immediate investigation, lest worst follow. By 9:45 a.m, De Forest, Dragomirov, Russia, Takahira, Japan, and Pirolo, Italy, were empowered to visit Illinois, and to take such steps as might be necessary for the resumption of traffic and all that implies. By 10 a.m, the hall was empty, and the 4 members and I were aboard what Pirolo insisted on calling my little godchild, that is to say, the new Victor Pirolo. Our planet prefers to know Victor Pirolo as a gentle, grey-haired enthusiast who spends his time near Foggia, inventing or creating new breeds of Spanish-Italian olive trees. But there is another side to his nature, the manufacture of quaint inventions, of which the Victor Pirolo is perhaps not the least surprising. She and a few score sister-craft of the same type embody his latest ideas, but she is not comfortable. An ABC boat does not take the air with the level-keeled lift of a liner, but shoots up rocket fashion like the aeroplane of our ancestors, and makes her height at top speed from the first. That is why I found myself sitting suddenly on the large lap of Eustace Arnott, who commands the ABC fleet. One knows vaguely that there is such a thing as a fleet somewhere on the planet, and that, theoretically, it exists for the purposes of what used to be known as war. Only a week before, when visiting a glacier sanatorium behind Gottshaven, I had seen some squadrons making false auroras far to the north while they manoeuvred round the pole, but naturally it had never occurred to me that the things could be used in earnest. Said Arnott to De Forest as I staggered to a seat on the chart-room divan, "We're tremendously grateful to 'em in Illinois. We've never had a chance of exercising all the fleet together. I've turned in a general call, and I expect we'll have at least 200 keels aloft this evening." "Well aloft?" De Forest asked. "Of course, sir. Out of sight till they're called for." Arnott laughed as he lolled over the transparent chart table where the map of the summer blue Atlantic slid along, degree by degree, in exact answer to our progress. Our dial already showed 320 miles per hour, and we were 2,000 feet above the uppermost traffic lines. "Now, where is this Illinois district of yours?" said Dragomirov. "One travels so much, one sees so little. Oh, I remember. It is in North America." De Forest, whose business it is to know the out-districts, told us that it lay at the foot of Lake Michigan, on a road to nowhere in particular, was about half an hour's run from end to end, and, except in one corner, as flat as the sea. Like most flat countries nowadays, it was heavily guarded against invasion of privacy by forced timber, 50-foot spruce and tamarack, grown in 5 years. The population was close on 2 millions, largely migratory between Florida and California, with a backbone of small farms. They call 1,000 acres a farm in Illinois, whose owners come into Chicago for amusements and society during the winter. They were, he said, noticeably kind, quiet folk, but a little exacting, as all flat countries must be, in their notions of privacy. There had, for instance, been no printed news sheet in Illinois for 27 years. Chicago argued that engines for printed news sooner or later developed into engines for invasion of privacy, which in turn might bring the old terror of crowds and blackmail back to the planet. So news sheets were not. "And that's Illinois," De Forest concluded. "You see, in the old days she was in the forefront of what they used to call progress, and Chicago—" "Chicago," said Takahira. "That's the little place where they installed the statue of the nigger in flames. A fine bit of old work." "When did you see it?" asked De Forest quickly. "They only unveil it once a year." "I know. At Thanksgiving. It was then," said Takahira with a shudder. "And they sang MacDonough's song, too." "Phew!" De Forest whistled. "I didn't know that. I wish you'd told me before. MacDonough's song may have had its uses when it was composed, but it was an infernal legacy for any man to leave behind." "It's protective instinct, my dear fellows," said Pirolo, rolling a cigarette. "The planet. She has had her dose of popular government. She suffers from inherited agoraphobia. She has no use for crowds." Dragomirov leaned forward to give him a light. "Certainly," said the white-bearded Russian. "The planet has taken all precautions against crowds for the past 100 years. What is our total population today? 600 million, we hope. 500, we think. But, if next year's census shows more than 450, I myself will eat all the extra little babies. We have cut the birth rate out, right out. For a long time we have said to Almighty God, 'Thank you, sir, but we do not much like your game of life, so we will not play.'" "Anyhow," said Arnott defiantly, Men live a century apiece on the average now. Oh, that is quite well. I am rich. You are rich. We are all rich and happy because we are so few and we live so long. Only I think Almighty God, He will remember what the planet was like in the time of crowds and the plague. Perhaps He will send us nerves, Pirolo? The Italian blinked into space. Perhaps, he said. He has sent them already. Anyhow, you cannot argue with the planet. She does not forget the old days. And what can you do? For sure we can't remake the world. De Forest glanced at the map, flowing smoothly across the table from west to east. We ought to be over our ground by 9 tonight. There won't be much sleep afterwards. On which hint we dispersed, and I slept till Takahira waked me for dinner. Our ancestors thought 9 hours sleep ample for their little lives. We, living 30 years longer, feel ourselves defrauded with less than 11 out of the 24. By 10 o'clock we were over Lake Michigan. The west shore was lightless except for a dull ground glare at Chicago and a single traffic-directing light, its leading beam pointing north, at Waukegan on our starboard bow. None of the lake villages gave any sign of life, and inward, westward, so far as we could see, blackness lay unbroken on the level earth. We swooped down and skimmed low across the dark, throwing calls county by county. Now and again we picked up the faint glimmer of a house light, or heard the rasp and rend of a cultivator being played across the fields. But northern Illinois as a whole was one inky, apparently uninhabited, waste of high-forced woods. Only our illuminated map, with its little pointer switching from county to county as we wheeled and twisted, gave us any idea of our position. Our calls, urgent, pleading, coaxing or commanding, through the general communicator, brought no answer. Illinois strictly maintained her own privacy in the timber which she grew for that purpose. "Oh, this is absurd," said De Forest. "We're like an owl trying to work a wheat field. Is this Bureau Creek? Let's land on it and get hold of someone." We brushed over a belt of forced woodland, 15-year-old maples 60 feet high, grounded on a private meadow dock, none too big, where we moored to our own grapnels, and hurried out through the warm dark night towards a light in a veranda. As we neared the garden gate I could have sworn we had stepped knee-deep in quicksand, for we could scarcely drag our feet against the prickling currents that clogged them. After 5 paces we stopped, wiping our foreheads, as hopelessly stuck on dry smooth turf as so many cows in a bog. "Pest!" cried Pirolo angrily. "We are ground-circuited, and it is my own system of ground-circuits too. I know the pool." "Good evening," said a girl's voice from the veranda. "Oh, I'm sorry. We've locked up. Wait a minute." We heard the click of a switch, and almost fell forward as the currents round our knees were withdrawn. The girl laughed and laid aside her knitting. An old-fashioned controller stood at her elbow, which she reversed from time to time, and we could hear the snort and clank of the obedient cultivator 1/2 a mile away, behind the guardian woods. "Come and sit down," she said. "I'm only playing a plough. Dad's gone to Chicago to— Ah, then it was your call I heard just now." She had caught sight of Arnott's board uniform, leapt to the switch and turned it full on. We were checked, gasping, waist-deep in currents this time, 3 yards from the veranda. "We only want to know what's the matter with Illinois," said De Forest placidly. "Then hadn't you better go to Chicago and find out?" she answered. "There's nothing wrong here. We own ourselves." "How can we go anywhere if you won't loose us?" De Forest went on, while Arnott scowled. Admirals of fleets are still quite human when their dignity is touched. "Stop a minute. You don't know how funny you look." She put her hands on her lips and laughed mercilessly. "Don't worry about that," said Arnott, and whistled. A voice answered from the Victor Pirolo in the meadow. "Only a single fuse ground circuit," Arnott called. "Sort it out gently, please." We heard the ping of a breaking lamp. A fuse blew out somewhere in the veranda roof, frightening a nestful of birds. The ground circuit was open. We stooped and rubbed our tingling ankles. "How rude! How very rude of you!" the maiden cried. "Sorry, but we haven't time to look funny," said Arnott. "We've got to go to Chicago, and if I were you, young lady, I'd go into the cellars for the next 2 hours and take Mother with me." Off he strode, with us at his heels, muttering indignantly till the humour of the thing struck and doubled him up with laughter at the foot of the gangway ladder. "The board hasn't shown what you might call a fat spark on this occasion," said De Forest, wiping his eyes. "I hope I didn't look as big a fool as you did, Arnott. Hello, what on earth is that? Dad coming home from Chicago?" There was a rattle and a rush, and a 5-plough cultivator, blades in air like so many teeth, trundled itself at us round the edge of the timber, fuming and sparking furiously. "Jump!" said Arnott as we bundled ourselves through the none-too-wide door. "Never mind about shutting it. Up!" The Victor Pirolo lifted like a bubble, and the vicious machine shot just underneath us, clawing high as it passed. "There's a nice little spit kitten for you," said Arnott, dusting his knees. "We ask her a civil question. First she circuits us, and then she plays a cultivator at us." "And then we fly," said Dragomirov. "If I were 40 years more young, I would go back and kiss her. Ho, ho!" "Aye," said Pirolo, "would smack her. My pet ship has been chased by a dirty plough. How do you say? Agricultural implement." "Oh, that is Illinois all over," said De Forest. "They don't content themselves with talking about privacy. They arrange to have it. And now, where's your alleged fleet, Arnott? We must assert ourselves against this wench." Arnott pointed to the black heavens. "Waiting on, up there," said he. "Shall I give them the whole installation, sir?" "Oh, I don't think the young lady is quite worth that," said De Forest. "Get over Chicago, and perhaps we'll see something." In a few minutes we were hanging at 2,000 feet over an oblong block of incandescence in the centre of the little town. "That looked like the old City Hall. Yes, there's Salati's statue in front of it," said Takahira. "But what on earth are they doing to the place? I thought they use it for a market nowadays. Drop a little, please." We could hear the sputter and crackle of road-surfacing machines, the cheap Western type, which fuse stone and rubbish into lava-like ribbed glass for their rough country roads. 3 or 4 surfacers worked on each side of a square of ruins. The brick and stone wreckage crumbled, slid forward, and presently spread out into white-hot pools of sticky slag, which the levelling rods smoothed more or less flat. Already a third of the big block had been so treated, and was cooling to dull red before our astonished eyes. "It's the old market," said De Forest. "Well, there's nothing to prevent Illinois from making a road through a market. It doesn't interfere with traffic that I can see." "Hush," said Arnott, gripping me by the shoulder. "Listen, they're singing. Why on earth are they singing?" We dropped again till we could see the black fringe of people at the edge of that glowing square. At first they only roared against the roar of the surfacers and levellers. Then the words came up clearly, the words of the forbidden song that all men knew, and none let pass their lips. Poor Pat MacDonough's song, made in the days of the crowds and the plague, every silly word of it loaded to sparking point with the planet's inherited memories of horror, panic, fear, and cruelty. And Chicago, innocent, contented little Chicago, was singing it aloud to the infernal tune that carried riot, pestilence, and lunacy round our planet a few generations ago. Once there was the people, terror gave its birth. Once there was the people, and it made a hell of earth. Then the stamp and pause. Earth arose and crushed it. Listen, O ye slain. Once there was the people. It shall never be again. The levellers thrust in savagely against the ruins, as the song renewed itself again, and again, louder than the crash of the melting walls. De Forest frowned. "I don't like that," he said. "They've broken back to the old days. They'll be killing somebody soon. I think we'd better divert 'em, Arnott." "Aye, aye, sir." Arnott's hand went to his cap, and we heard the hull of the Victor Pirolo ring to the command. "Lamps! Both watches! Stand by! Lamps! Lamps! Lamps!" "Keep postido," Takahiro whispered to me. "Brinkas, please, quartermaster." "It's all right, said Pirolo from behind, and to my horror slipped over my head some sort of rubber helmet that locked with a snap. I could feel thick colloid bosses before my eyes, but I stood in absolute darkness. "To save the sight," he explained, and pushed me onto the chart-room divan. "You will see in a minute." As he spoke, I became aware of a thin thread of almost intolerable light, let down from heaven at an immense distance, one vertical hair's breadth of frozen lightning. "Those are our flanking ships," said Arnott at my elbow. "That one is over Galena. Look south. That other one's over Keithburg. Vincennes is behind us, and north yonder is Winthrop Woods. The fleet's in position, sir." This to De Forest. "As soon as you give the word." "Ah, no, no!" cried Dragomirov at my side. I could feel the old man tremble. "I do not know all that you can do, but be kind. I ask you to be a little kind to them below. This is horrible, horrible. When a woman kills a chicken, dynasties and empires sicken," Takahiro quoted. "It is too late to be gentle now." "Then take off my helmet! Take off my helmet!" Dragomirov began hysterically. Pirolo must have put his arm round him. "Hush," he said. "I am here. It is all right, Ivan, my dear fellow." "I'll just send our little girl in Bureau County a warning," said Arnott. "She don't deserve it, but we'll allow her a minute or two to take Mamma to the cellar." In the utter hush that followed the growling spark after Arnott had linked up his service communicator with the invisible fleet, we heard MacDonough's song from the city beneath us grow fainter as we rose to position. Then I clapped my hand before my mask lenses, for it was as though the floor of heaven had been riddled, and all the inconceivable blaze of suns in the making was poured through the manholes. "You needn't count," said Arnott. I had had no thought of such a thing. "There are 250 keels up there, 5 miles apart. Full power, please, for another 12 seconds. The firmament, as far as eye could reach, stood on pillars of white fire. One fell on the glowing square at Chicago and turned it black. "Oh, oh, oh! Can men be allowed to do such things?" Dragomirov cried, and fell across our knees. "Glass of water, please," said Takahiro to a helmeted shape that leaped forward. "He is a little faint." The lights switched off, and the darkness stunned like an avalanche. We could hear Dragomirov's teeth on the glass edge. Pirolo was comforting him. All right, he repeated. "Come and lie down. Come below and take off your mask. I give you my word, old friend, it is all right. They are my siege lights. Little Victor Pirolo's little lights. You know me. I do not hurt people. Pardon, Dragomirov moaned. I have never seen death. I have never seen the board take action. Shall we go down and burn them alive? Or is that already done? Oh, hush, said Pirolo, and I think he rocked him in his arms. Do we repeat, sir? Arnott asked De Forest. Give 'em a minute's break, De Forest replied. They may need it. We waited a minute, and then MacDonough's song, broken but defiant, rose from undefeated Chicago. They seem fond of that tune, said De Forest. I should let 'em have it, Arnott. Very good, sir, said Arnott, and felt his way to the communicator keys. No lights broke forth, but the hollow of the skies made herself the mouth for one note that touched the raw fibre of the brain. Men hear such sounds in delirium, advancing like tides from horizons beyond the ruled foreshores of space. That's our pitch-pipe, said Arnott. We may be a bit ragged. I've never conducted 250 performers before. He pulled out the couplers and struck a full chord on the service communicators. The beams of light leaped down again and danced, solemnly and awfully, a stilt dance, sweeping 30 or 40 miles left and right at each stiff-legged kick, while the darkness delivered itself. There is no scale to measure against that utterance of the tune to which they kept time. Certain notes, one learnt to expect them with terror, cut through one's marrow, but after 3 minutes, thought and emotion passed in indescribable agony. We saw, we heard, but I think we were in some sort of swooning. The 250 beams shifted, reformed, straddled and split, narrowed, widened, rippled in ribbons, broke into 1,000 white-hot parallel lines, melted and revolved in interwoven rings like old-fashioned engine turning, flung up to the zenith, made as if to descend and renew the torment, halted at the last instant, twizzled insanely round the horizon, and vanished to bring back for the 100th time darkness more shattering than their instantly renewed light over all Illinois. Then the tune and light ceased together, and we heard one single devastating wail that shook all the horizon as a rubbed wet finger shakes the rim of a bowl. "Ah, that is my new siren," said Pirolo. "You can break an iceberg in half if you find the proper pitch. They will whistle by squadrons now. It is the wind through pierced shutters in the bows." I had collapsed beside Dragomirov, broken and snivelling feebly, because I had been delivered before my time to all the terrors of Judgment Day, and the archangels of the resurrection were hailing me naked across the universe to the sound of the music of the spheres. Then I saw De Forest smacking Arnott's helmet with his open hand. The wailing died down in a long shriek as a black shadow swooped past us and returned to her place above the lower clouds. "I hate to interrupt a specialist when he's enjoying himself," said De Forest, "but as a matter of fact, all Illinois has been asking us to stop for these last 15 seconds. What a pity!" Arnott slipped off his mask. "I wanted you to hear us really hum. Our lower C can lift street paving." "It is hell, hell!" cried Dragomirov, and sobbed aloud. Arnott looked away as he answered, "It's a few thousand volts ahead of the old shoot-'em and sink-'em game, but I should scarcely call it that. What shall I tell the fleet, sir?" "Tell them we're very pleased and impressed. I don't think they need wait on any longer. There isn't a spark left down there." De Forest pointed. "They'll be deaf and blind." "Oh, I think not, sir. The demonstration lasted less than 10 minutes. "Marvellous," Takahira sighed. I should have said it was half a night, though. Now, shall we go down and pick up the pieces? But first, a small drink, said Pirolo. The board must not arrive weeping at its own works. I am an old fool, Dragomirov began piteously. I did not know what would happen. It is all new to me. We reason with them in Little Russia. Chicago North landing tower was unlighted, and Arnott worked his ship into the clips by her own lights. As soon as these broke out, we heard groanings of horror and appeal from many people below. "All right," shouted Arnott into the darkness. "We aren't beginning again." We descended by the stairs to find ourselves knee-deep in a grovelling crowd, some crying that they were blind, others beseeching us not to make any more noises, but the greater part writhing face downwards, their hands or their caps before their eyes. It was Pirolo who came to our rescue. He climbed the side of a surfacing machine, and there, gesticulating as though they could see, made oration to those afflicted people of Illinois. "You stupids," he began, "there is nothing to fuss for. Of course your eyes will smart and be red tomorrow. You will look as if you and your wives had drunk too much, but in a little while you will see again as well as before. I tell you this, and I am Pirolo, Victor Pirolo." The crowd with one accord shuddered, for many legends attached to Victor Pirolo of Foggia deep in the secrets of God. "Pirolo!" An unsteady voice lifted itself. "Then tell us, was there anything except light in those lights of yours just now?" The question was repeated from every corner of the darkness. Pirolo laughed. "No," he thundered. "Why have small men such large voices? I give you my word, and the board's word. There was nothing except light, just light, you stupids. Your birth rate is too low already as it is. Some day I must invent something to send it up, but send it down never. Is that true? We thought. Somebody said." One could feel the tension relax all round. "You two big fools," Pirolo cried. "You could have sent us a call, and we would have told you." "Send you a call?" a deep voice shouted. "I wish you had been at our end of the wire." "I'm glad I wasn't," said De Forest. "It was bad enough from behind the lamps. Never mind, it's over now. Is there anyone here I can talk business with? I'm De Forest for the board." "You might begin with me, for one. I'm mayor," the bass voice replied. A big man rose unsteadily from the street and staggered towards us where we sat on the broad turf edging in front of the garden fences. "I ought to be the first on my feet, am I?" said he. "Yes," said De Forest, and steadied him as he dropped down beside us. "Hello, Andy, is that you?" a voice cried. "Excuse me," said the mayor. "That sounds like my chief of police. Bluthner." "Bluthner it is, and here's Mulligan and Keefe on their feet." "Bring 'em up, please, Blut. We're supposed to be the four in charge of this hamlet. What we says goes. And De Forest, what do you say?" "Nothing yet," De Forest answered, as we made room for the panting, reeling men. "You've cut out of system. Well?" "Tell the steward to send down drinks, please," Arnott whispered to an orderly at his side. "Good," said the mayor, smacking his dry lips. "Now I suppose we can take it, De Forest, that henceforward the board will administer us direct." "Not if the board can avoid it," De Forest laughed. "The ABC is responsible for the planetary traffic only." "And all that implies." The big four who ran Chicago chanted their Magna Charta like children at school. "Well, get on," said De Forest wearily. "What is your silly trouble, anyway?" "Too much damn democracy," said the mayor, laying his hand on De Forest's knee. "So? I thought Illinois had her dose of that." "She has, that's why. Blut, what did you do with our prisoners last night?" "Locked 'em in the water tower to prevent the women killing 'em," the chief of police replied. "I'm too blind to move just yet, but—" "Arnott, send some of your people, please, and fetch 'em along," said De Forest. "They're triple-circuited," the mayor called. "You'll have to blow out 3 fuses." He turned to De Forest, his large outline just visible in the paling darkness. "I hate to throw any more work on the board. I'm an administrator myself, but we've had a little fuss with our serviles. What? In a big city there's bound to be a few men and women who can't live without listening to themselves, and who prefer drinking out of pipes they don't own both ends of. They inhabit flats and hotels all the year round. They say it saves them trouble. Anyway, it gives them more time to make trouble for their neighbours. We call them serviles locally, and they're apt to be tuberculous." "Just so," said the man called Mulligan. "Transportation is civilization. Democracy is disease. I've proved it by the blood test every time." "Mulligan's our health officer and a one-idea man," said the mayor, laughing. "But it's true that most serviles haven't much control. They will talk, and when people take to talking as a business, anything may arrive, mayn't it, De Forest?" "Anything, except the facts of the case," said De Forest, laughing. "I'll give you those in a minute," said the mayor. "Our serviles got to talking, first in their houses and then on the streets, telling men and women how to manage their own affairs. You can't teach a servile not to finger his neighbour's soul. That's invasion of privacy, of course, but in Chicago we'll suffer anything sooner than make crowds. Nobody took much notice, and so I let 'em alone. My fault. I was warned there would be trouble, but there hasn't been a crowd or murder in Illinois for 19 years. 22, said his chief of police. Likely. Anyway, we'd forgot such things. So, from talking in the houses and on the streets, our serviles go to calling a meeting at the old market yonder. He nodded across the square, where the wrecked buildings heaved up grey in the dawn glimmer behind the square-cased statue of the Negro in flames. There's nothing to prevent anyone calling meetings, except that it's against human nature to stand in a crowd, besides being bad for the health. I ought to have known by the way our men and women attended that first meeting that trouble was brewing. There were as many as 1,000 in the marketplace, touching each other, touching. Then the serviles turned in all tongue switches and talked, and we— What did they talk about? Said Takahira. First, how badly things were managed in the city. That pleased us for. We were on the platform because we hoped to catch 1 or 2 good men for city work. You know how rare executive capacity is. Even if we didn't, it's refreshing to find anyone interested enough in our job to damn our eyes. You don't know what it means to work year in, year out without a spark of difference with a living soul. Oh, don't we? Said De Forest. There are times on the board when we'd give our positions if anyone would kick us out and take hold of things themselves. But they won't, said the mayor ruefully. I assure you, sir, we 4 have done things in Chicago in the hope of rousing people that would have discredited Nero. But what do they say? Very good, Andy. Have it your own way. Anything's better than a crowd. I'll go back to my land. You can't do anything with folk who go where they please and don't want anything on God's earth except their own way. There isn't a kick or a kicker left on the planet. Then I suppose that little shed yonder fell down by itself, said De Forest. We could see the bare and still smoking ruins, and hear the slag pools crackle as they hardened and set. Oh, that's only amusement. Tell you later. As I was saying, our serviles held a meeting, and pretty soon we had to ground circuit the platform to save 'em from being killed, and that didn't make our people any more pacific. How do you mean? I ventured to ask. If you've ever been ground circuited, said the mayor, you'll know it don't improve a man's temper to be held up straining against nothing. No, sir. 800 or 900 folk kept pawing and buzzing like flies in treacle for 2 hours, while a pack of perfectly safe serviles invades their mental and spiritual privacy. May be amusing to watch, but they are not pleasant to handle afterwards." Pirolo chuckled. "Our folk owned themselves. They were of opinion things were going too far and too fiery. I warned the serviles, but they're born house-dwellers. Unless a fact hits them on the head, they cannot see it. Would you believe me? They went on to talk of what they called popular government. They did. They wanted us to go back to the old voodoo business of voting with papers and wooden boxes, and word-drunk people and printed formulas and news sheets. They said they practiced it among themselves about what they'd have to eat in their flats and hotels. Yes, sir. They stood up behind Bluthner's doubled ground circuits, and they said that, in this present year of grace, to self-owning men and women, on that very spot. Then they finished," he lowered his voice cautiously, "by talking about the people. And then Bluthner, he had to sit up all night in charge of the circuits because he couldn't trust his men to keep 'em shut. I was trying 'em too high," the chief of police broke in, "but we couldn't hold the crowd ground-circuited forever. I gathered in all the serviles on charge of crowd-making and put 'em in the water tower, and then I let things cut loose. I had to. The district lit like a sparked gas tank." "The news was out over 7 degrees of country," the mayor continued, "and when once it's a question of invasion of privacy, goodbye to right and reason in Illinois. They began turning out traffic lights and locking up landing towers on Thursday night. Friday they stopped all traffic and asked for the board to take over. Then they wanted to clean Chicago off the side of the lake and rebuild elsewhere, just for a souvenir of the people that the serviles talked about. I suggested they should slag the old market where the meeting was held, while I turned in a call to you all on the board. That kept them quiet till you came along, and now you can take hold of the situation." "Any chance of their quieting down?" De Forest asked. "You can try," said the mayor. De Forest raised his voice in the face of the reviving crowd that had edged in towards us. Day was come. "Don't you think this business can be arranged?" he began, but there was a roar of angry voices. "We've finished with crowds. We aren't going back to the old days. Take us over. Take the serviles away. Administer direct, or we'll kill 'em. Down with the people." An attempt was made to begin MacDonough's song. It got no further than the first line, for the victor Pirolo sent down a warning drone on one-stopped horn. A wrecked sidewall of the old market tottered and fell inwards on the slag pools. None spoke or moved till the last of the dust had settled down again, turning the steel case of Salati's statue ashy grey. "You see, you'll just have to take us over," the mayor whispered. De Forest shrugged his shoulders. "You talk as if executive capacity could be snatched out of the air like so much horsepower. Can't you manage yourselves on any terms?" he said. "We can, if you say so. It will only cost those few lives to begin with." The mayor pointed across the square, where Arnott's men guided a stumbling group of 10 or 12 men and women to the lakefront, and halted them under the statue. "Now, I think," said Takahira under his breath, "there will be trouble." The mass in front of us growled like beasts. At that moment the sun rose clear and revealed the blinking assembly to itself. As soon as it realized that it was a crowd, we saw the shiver of horror and mutual repulsion shoot across it precisely as the steely floors shot across the lake outside. Nothing was said, and, being half-blind, of course it moved slowly. Yet in less than 15 minutes, most of that vast multitude, 3,000 at the lowest count, melted away like frost on south eaves. The remnants stretched themselves on the grass, where a crowd feels and looks less like a crowd. "These mean business," the mayor whispered to Takahira. "There are a goodish few women there who've borne children. I don't like it. The morning draught off the lake stirred the trees round us with promise of a hot day. The sun reflected itself dazzlingly on the canister-shaped covering of Salati's statue. Cocks crew in the gardens, and we could hear gate latches clicking in the distance as people stumblingly resought their homes. "I'm afraid there won't be any morning deliveries," said De Forest. "We rather upset things in the country last night." "That makes no odds," the Mayor returned. "We're all provisioned for 6 months. We take no chances." Nor, when you come to think of it, does anyone else. It must be 3/4 of a generation since any house or city faced a food shortage. Yet is there house or city on the planet today that has not half a year's provisions laid in? We are like the shipwrecked seamen in the old books, who, having once nearly starved to death, ever afterwards hide away bits of food and biscuit. Truly we trust no crowds, nor system based on crowds. De Forest waited till the last footsteps had died away. Meantime, the prisoners at the base of the statue shuffled, posed, and fidgeted with the shamelessness of quite little children. None of them were more than 6 feet high, and many of them were as grey-haired as the ravaged, harassed heads of old pictures. They huddled together in actual touch, while the crowd, spaced at large intervals, looked at them with congested eyes. Suddenly a man among them began to talk. The Mayor had not in the least exaggerated. It appeared that our planet lay sunk in slavery beneath the heel of the aerial board of control. The orator urged us to arise in our might, burst our prison doors and break our fetters. All his metaphors, by the way, were of the most medieval. Next he demanded that every matter of daily life, including most of the physical functions, should be submitted for decision at any time of the week, month, or year to, I gathered, anybody who happened to be passing by or residing within a certain radius, and that everybody should forthwith abandon his concerns to settle the matter, first by crowd-making, next by talking to the crowds made, and lastly by describing crosses on pieces of paper, which rubbish should later be counted with certain mystic ceremonies and oaths. Out of this amazing play, he assured us, would automatically arise a higher, nobler, and kinder world, based, he demonstrated this with the awful lucidity of the insane, based on the sanctity of the crowd and the villainy of the single person. In conclusion, he called loudly upon God to testify to his personal merits and integrity. When the flow ceased, I turned bewildered to Takahira, who was nodding solemnly. "Quite correcto," said he. "It is all in the old books. He has left nothing out, not even the Watoku." "But I don't see how this stuff can upset a child, much less a district," I replied. "Ah, you are too young," said Dragomirov. "For another thing, you are not a mamma. Please look at the mammas." 10 or 15 women who remained had separated themselves from the silent men and were drawing in towards the prisoners. It reminded one of the stealthy encircling, before the rush in at the quarry, of wolves round musk-oxen in the north. The prisoners saw and drew together more closely. The Mayor covered his face with his hands for an instant. De Forest, bareheaded, stepped forward between the prisoners and the slowly, stiffly moving line. "That's all very interesting," he said to the dry-lipped orator, "but the point seems that you've been making crowds and invading privacy." A woman stepped forward and would have spoken, but there was a quick assenting murmur from the men, who realized that De Forest was trying to pull the situation down to ground line. "Yes, yes," they cried. "We cut out because they made crowds and invaded privacy. Stick to that. Keep on the switch. Lift the serviles out of this. The board's in charge. Hush!" "Yes, the board's in charge," said De Forest. "I'll take formal evidence of crowd-making if you like. but the members of the board can testify to it. Will that do?" The women had closed in another pace, with hands that clenched and unclenched at their sides. "Good! Good enough!" the men cried. "We're content. Only take them away quickly." "Come along up," said De Forest to the captives. "Breakfast is quite ready." It appeared, however, that they did not wish to go. They intended to remain in Chicago and make crowds. They pointed out that De Forest's proposal was gross invasion of privacy. "My dear fellow," said Pirolo to the most voluble of the leaders, "you hurry, or your crowd that can't be wrong will kill you." "But that would be murder," answered the believer in the crowds, and there was a roar of laughter from all sides that seemed to show the crisis had broken. A woman stepped forward from the line of women, laughing, I protest, as merrily as any of the company. One hand, of course, shaded her eyes, the other was at her throat. "Oh, they needn't be afraid of being killed," she called. "Not in the least," said De Forest. "But don't you think that now the board's in charge, you might go home while we get these people away?" "I shall be home long before that. It has been rather a trying day." She stood up to her full height, dwarfing even De Forest 6'8", and smiled with eyes closed against the fierce light. "Yes, rather," said De Forest. "I'm afraid you feel the glare a little. We'll have the ship down." He motioned to the Pirolo to drop between us and the sun, and at the same time to loop circuit the prisoners, who were a trifle unsteady. We saw them stiffen to the current where they stood. The woman's voice went on, sweet and deep and unshaken. "I don't suppose you men realize how much this sort of thing means to a woman. I've borne 3. We women don't want our children given to crowds. It must be an inherited instinct. Crowds make trouble. They bring back the old days. Hate, fear, blackmail, publicity. The people. That. She pointed to the statue, and the crowd growled once more. "Yes, if they are allowed to go on," said De Forest. "But this little affair—" "It means so much to us women that this little affair should never happen again. Of course, never's a big word, but one feels so strongly that it's important to stop crowds at the very beginning. Those creatures—" She pointed with her left hand at the prisoners swaying like seaweed in a tideway as the circuit pulled them. "Those people have friends and wives and children in the city and elsewhere. One doesn't want anything done to them, you know. It's terrible to force a human being out of 50 or 60 years of good life. I'm only 40 myself, I know, but at the same time, one feels an example should be made, because no price is too heavy to pay if these people, and all that they imply, can be put an end to. Do you quite understand? Or would you be kind enough to tell your men to take the casing off the statue? It's worth looking at." "I understand perfectly, but I don't think anybody here wants to see the statue on an empty stomach. Excuse me one moment." De Forest called up to the ship. "A flying loop ready on the port side, if you please." Then to the woman he said with some crispness, "You might leave us a little discretion in the matter." "Oh, of course. Thank you for being so patient. I know my arguments are silly, but—" She half turned away and went on in a changed voice. "Perhaps this will help you to decide." She threw out her right arm with a knife in it. Before the blade could be returned to her throat or her bosom, it was twitched from her grip, sparked as it flew out of the shadow of the ship above, and fell flashing in the sunshine at the foot of the statue 50 yards away. The outflung arm was arrested, rigid as a bar for an instant, till the releasing circuit permitted her to bring it slowly to her side. The other women shrank back silent among the men. Pirolo rubbed his hands, and Takahira nodded. "That was clever of you, De Forest," said he. "What a glorious pose," Dragomirov murmured. for the frightened woman was on the edge of tears. "Why did you stop me? I would have done it," she cried. "I have no doubt you would," said De Forest, "but we can't waste a life like yours on these people. I hope the arrest didn't sprain your wrist. It's so hard to regulate a flying loop. But I think you are quite right about those persons, women and children. We'll take them all away with us, if you promise not to do anything stupid to yourself." I promise. She controlled herself with an effort. "But it's so important to us women. We know what it means, and I thought if you saw I was in earnest—" "I saw you were, and you've gained your point. I shall take all your serviles away with me at once. The mayor will make lists of their friends and families in the city and the district, and he'll ship them after us this afternoon." "Sure," said the mayor, rising to his feet. "Keith, if you can see, hadn't you better finish levelling off the old market? It don't look sightly the way it is now, and we shan't use it for crowds any more." "I think you had better wipe out that statue as well, Mr. Mayor," said De Forest. "I don't question its merits as a work of art, but I believe it's a shade morbid." "Certainly, sir. Oh, Keith, slag the nigger before you go on to fuse the market. I'll get to the communicators and tell the district that the board is in charge. Are you making any special appointments, sir?" "None. We haven't men to waste on these backwoods. Carry on as before, but under the board. Arnott, run your serviles aboard, please. Ground ship and pass them through the bilge doors. We'll wait till we've finished with this work of art." The prisoners trailed past him, talking fluently, but unable to gesticulate in the drag of the current. Then the surfacers rolled up, 2 on each side of the statue. With one accord the spectators looked elsewhere, but there was no need. Keith turned on full power, and the thing simply melted within its case. All I saw was a surge of white-hot metal pouring over the plinth, a glimpse of Salatti's inscription, "To the eternal memory of the justice of the people," ere the stone base itself cracked and powdered into finest lime. The crowd cheered. "Thank you," said De Forest, "but we want our breakfast, and I expect you do too. Goodbye, Mr. Mayor. Delighted to see you at any time, but I hope I shan't have to officially for the next 30 years. Goodbye, madam. Yes, we're all given to nerves nowadays. I suffer from them myself. Goodbye, gentlemen all. You're under the tyrannous heel of the board from this moment, but if ever you feel like breaking your fetters, you've only to let us know. This is no treat to us. Good luck." We embarked amid shouts, and did not check our lift till they had dwindled into whispers. Then De Forest flung himself on the chart-room divan and mopped his forehead. "I don't mind men," he panted, "but women are the devil." "Still the devil," said Pirolo cheerfully, "that one would have suicided. I know it. That was why I signalled for the flying loop to be clapped on her. I owe you an apology for that, Arnott. I hadn't time to catch your eye, and you were busy with our caitiffs. By the way, who actually answered my signal? It was a smart piece of work." "Ilroy," said Arnott, "but he overloaded the wave. It may be pretty gallery work to knock a knife out of a lady's hand, but didn't you notice how she rubbed 'em? She scorched her fingers. Slovenly, I call it. Far be it from me to interfere with fleet discipline, but don't be too hard on the boy. If that woman had killed herself, they would have killed every servile and everything related to a servile throughout the district by nightfall." "That was what she was playing for," Takahira said. "And with our fleet dug on, we could have done nothing to hold them." "I may be arse enough to walk into a ground circuit," said Arnott, "but I don't dismiss my fleet till I'm reasonably sure that the trouble is over. They're in position still, and I intend to keep 'em there till the serviles are shipped out of the district. That last little crowd meant murder, my friends." "Nerves, all nerves," said Pirolo. "You cannot argue with agoraphobia." "And it is not as if they had seen much dead, "What is it?" said Takahira. "In all my 90 years, I have never seen death." Dragomirov spoke as one who would excuse himself. "Perhaps that was why. Last night." Then it came out as we sat over breakfast that, with the exception of Arnott and Pirolo, none of us had ever seen a corpse, or knew in what manner the spirit passes. "We're a nice lot to flap about governing the planet," De Forest laughed. "I confess, now it's all over, that my main fear was that I mightn't be able to pull it off without losing a life." "I thought of that too," said Arnott. "But there's no death reported, and I've inquired everywhere. What are we supposed to do with our passengers? I've fed 'em." "We're between two switches," De Forest drawled. "If we drop them in any place that isn't under the board, the natives will make their presence an excuse for cutting out, same as Illinois did, and forcing the board to take over. If we drop them in any place under the board's control, they'll be killed as soon as our backs are turned." "If you say so," said Pirolo thoughtfully. "I can guarantee that they will become extinct in process of time, quite happily. What is their birth rate now?" "Go down and ask 'em," said De Forest. "I think they might become nervous and tear me to bits," the philosopher of Foggia replied. "Not really. Well, open the bilge doors," said Takahira with a downward jerk of the thumb. "Scarcely, after all the trouble we've taken to save 'em," said De Forest. "Try London," Arnott suggested. "You could turn Satan himself loose there, and they'd only ask him to dinner." "Good man, you've given me an idea. Vincent! Oh, Vincent!" He threw the general communicator open so that we could all hear, and in a few minutes the chart-room filled with the rich, fruity voice of Leopold Vincent, who has purveyed all London her choicest amusements for the last 30 years. We answered with expectant grins, as though we were actually in the stalls of, say, the Combination on a first night. "We've picked up something in your line," De Forest began. "That's good, dear man, if it's old enough. There's nothing to beat the old things for business purposes. Have you seen London, Chatham and Dover at Earl's Court? No, I thought I missed you there. Immense. I've had the real steam locomotive engines built from the old designs, and the iron rails cast specially by hand. Cloth cushions in the carriages, too. Immense. And paper railway tickets. And Polly Milton." "Polly Milton back again?" said Arnott rapturously. "Book me 2 stalls for tomorrow night. What's she singing now, bless her?" "The old songs. Nothing comes up to the old touch. Listen to this, dear men." Vincent carolled with flourishes. "Oh, cruel lamps of London, if tears your light could drown, your victims' eyes would weep them, O lights of London town." Then they weep. "You see," Pirolo waved his hands at us, "the old world always wept when it saw crowds together. It did not know why, but it wept. We know why, but we do not weep, except when we pay to be made to by fat, wicked old Vincent." "Hold yourself," Vincent laughed. "I'm a public benefactor. I keep the world soft and united." "And I'm De Forest of the board," said De Forest acidly, "trying to get a little business done. As I was saying, I've picked up a few people in Chicago." "I cut out. Chicago is—" "Do listen. They're perfectly unique." "Do they build houses of baked mud blocks while you wait, eh? That's an old contact." "They're an untouched, primitive community with all the old ideas. Sewing machines and maypole dancers, cooking on coal gas stoves, lighting pipes with matches, and driving horses. Gerolstein tried that last year, an absolute blowout." De Forest plugged him wrathfully, and poured out the story of our doings for the last 24 hours on the top note. "And they do it all in public," he concluded. "You can't stop 'em. The more public, the better they are pleased. They'll talk for hours, like you. Now you can come in again." "Do you really mean they know how to vote?" said Vincent. "Can they act it?" "Act? It's their life to 'em, and you never saw such faces, scarred like volcanoes, envy, hatred, and malice in plain sight, wonderfully flexible voices. They weep too." "Aloud? In public?" "I guarantee. Not a spark of shame or reticence in the entire installation. It's the chance of your career." "Do you say you've brought their voting props along? Those papers and ballot box things?" "No, confound you. I'm not a luggage lifter. Apply direct to the mayor of Chicago. He'll forward you everything." "Well?" "Wait a minute. Does Chicago want to kill 'em? That'd look well on the communicators." "Yes. They were only rescued with difficulty from a howling mob, if you know what that is." "But I don't," answered the great Vincent simply. "Well then, they'll tell you themselves. They can make speeches hours long." "How many are there?" "By the time we ship 'em all over there'll be perhaps 100, counting children. An old world in miniature. Can't you see it?" Yes, but I've got to pay for it if it's a blowout, dear man." "They can sing the old war songs in the streets. They can get word drunk and make crowds and invade privacy in the genuine old-fashioned way, and they'll do the voting trick as often as you ask 'em a question." "Too good," said Vincent. "You unbelieving Jew. I've got a dozen head aboard here. I'll put you through direct. Sample 'em yourself." He lifted the switch and we listened. Our passengers on the lower deck at once, but not less than 5 at a time, explained themselves to Vincent. They had been taken from the bosom of their families, stripped of their possessions, given food without finger bowls, and cast into captivity in a noisome dungeon. "But look here," said Arnott aghast. "They're saying what isn't true. My lower deck isn't noisome, and I saw to the finger bowls myself." "My people talk like that sometimes in Little Russia," said Dragomirov. "We reason with them. We never kill, no." "But it's not true," Arnott insisted. "What can you do with people who don't tell facts? They're mad." "Hush," said Pirolo, his hand to his ear. "It is such a little time since all the planet told lies." We heard Vincent silkily sympathetic. Would they, he asked, repeat their assertions in public, before a vast public? Only let Vincent give them a chance, and the planet, they vowed, should ring with their wrongs. Their aim in life, 2 women and a man explained it together, was to reform the world. Oddly enough, this also had been Vincent's life dream. He offered them an arena in which to explain, and by their living example to raise the planet to loftier levels. He was eloquent on the moral uplift of a simple old-world life, presented in its entirety to a debauched civilization. Could they, would they, for 3 months certain, devote themselves under his auspices as missionaries to the elevation of mankind at a place called Earl's Court, which, he said, with some truth, was one of the intellectual centres of the planet? They thanked him and demanded, we could hear his chuckle of delight, time to discuss and to vote on the matter. The vote, solemnly managed by counting heads, 1 head, 1 vote, was favourable. His offer, therefore, was accepted, and they moved a vote of thanks to him in 2 speeches, one by what they called the proposer, and the other by the seconder. Vincent threw over to us, his voice shaking with gratitude. "I've got 'em! Did you hear those speeches? That's nature, dear men. Art can't teach that. And they voted as easily as lying. I've never had a troop of natural liars before. Bless you, dear men. Remember, you're on my free list for ever, anywhere, all of you. Oh, Gerolstein will be sick. Sick!" "Then you think they'll do?" said De Forest. "Do? The little village'll go crazy. I'll knock up a series of old-world plays for 'em. Their voices will make you laugh and cry. My God, dear men, where do you suppose they picked up all their misery from on this sweet earth? I'll have a pageant of the world's beginnings, and Mosenthal shall do the music. I'll go and knock up a village forum by tonight. We'll meet you at number 15 West Landing Tower, said De Forest. Remember, the rest will be coming along tomorrow. Let 'em all come, said Vincent. You don't know how hard it is nowadays, even for me, to find something that really gets under the public's damned iridium-plated hide. But I've got it at last. Goodbye. Well, said De Forest, when we had finished laughing, if anyone understood corruption in London, I might have played off Vincent against Gerolstein and sold my captives at enormous prices. As it is, I shall have to be their legal adviser tonight when the contracts are signed, and they won't exactly press any commission on me either. Meantime, said Takahira, we cannot, of course, confine members of Leopold Vincento's last engaged company. Chairs for the ladies, please, Arnotto. Then I go to bed, said De Forest. I can't face any more women, and he vanished. When our passengers were released and given another meal, Fingerbowls came first this time. They told us what they thought of us and the board, and, like Vincent, we all marvelled how they had contrived to extract and secrete so much bitter poison and unrest out of the good life God gives us. They raged, they stormed, they palpitated, flushed and exhausted their poor torn nerves, panted themselves into silence, and renewed the senseless, shameless attacks. "But can't you understand," said Pirolo pathetically to a shrieking woman, "that if we left you in Chicago, you'd have been killed? No, we shouldn't. You were bound to save us from being murdered. Then we should have had to kill a lot of other people. That doesn't matter. We were preaching the truth. You can't stop us. We shall go on preaching in London, and then you'll see." "You can see now," said Pirolo, and opened a lower shutter. We were closing in on the little village, with her 3,000,000 people spread out at ease inside her ring of girdling main traffic lights. Those 8 fixed beams at Chatham, Tonbridge, Redhill, Dorking, Woking, St Albans, Chipping Ongar and Southend. Leopold Vincent's new company looked, with small pale faces, at the silence, the size, and the separated houses. Then some began to weep aloud, shamelessly, always without shame. MacDonough's Song. Whether the state can loose and bind in heaven as well as on earth, if it be wiser to kill mankind before or after the birth, these are matters of high concern where state-kept schoolmen are. But holy state, we have lived to learn, endeth in holy war. Whether the people be led by the Lord or lured by the loudest throat, if it be quicker to die by the sword or cheaper to die by vote, these are the things we have dealt with once, and they will not rise from their grave. For holy people, however it runs, endeth in holy slave. Whatsoever for any cause seeketh to take or give, power above or beyond the laws, suffer it not to live. Holy state or holy king, or holy people's will, have no truck with the senseless thing, order the guns and kill. Saying after me, once there was the people, terror gave it birth. Once there was the people, and it made a hell of earth. Earth arose and crushed it. Listen, O ye slain. Once there was the people, it shall never be again. End of As Easy as ABC by Rudyard Kipling.